Thank you. All right, continue.
Mr. Kuba, you were testifying yesterday that you briefed Mr. McBride on the rendition case, and he then instructed you to go and collect the docket, which you did. Could you then tell the chair how it came about that what is now known as the second report was prepared?
I'm sorry, Ms. Wenzel. I didn't hear the question, and the reason I didn't hear it is because I saw what they've written on your name tag there. Did you see that?
No.
It says you are Advocate Wenzel, SC.
I know, that is a very nice promotion. I'll tell the Bar Council.
Okay, yes. Do you want to repeat the question so I can hear it?
Yes, Chair. Could you explain to the Chair how it came about that you compiled the second report together with Sabia? I mean Sisoko, beg your pardon.
Thank you. After I was allowed to go and collect the docket from Gauteng, I came back with the docket, and I had already been informed because Mr. Sisoko was not involved from the onset to say that I need to involve Mr. Sisoko. So I did attachment of the evidence that I had already acquired, and we evaluated the evidence in totality, which gave birth to what is called the second report.
And is that the report that appears in the bundle at page 139?
That's correct.
Now, the final recommendation in that report is as follows.
I think let's always, as far as possible, refer to them as either the first report, the amended report, or the second report, so it will be clear which one we're talking about.
Thank you. If you have regard to page 176 of the second report, it says, based on the available evidence, the Independent Police Investigative Directorate recommends that no charges should be brought against Lieutenant General Dramat and Major General Sabia. The investigation established there is no prima facie case against them. However, with regard to Colonel Maluleka, there is a prima facie case to sustain charges of kidnapping and defeating the ends of justice. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And this report was signed both by you, Mr. Sisoko, and Mr. McBride. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what was Mr. McBride's involvement in the compilation of the report?
Mr. McBride was not involved in the actual compilation. However, what happened is that because he was going to co-sign, the document went to him for spelling check, and it was returned to us until he was satisfied about the quality of the report.
Now, if you go to page 25 of your statement, in paragraph 81, you say, shortly before Mr. McBride's suspension in March 2015, you received a number of calls from a personal assistant of the then Minister of Police, Minister Nathi Nhleko. Could you tell the Chair and direct your answers to the Chair, please? What was that about?
The call was about the minister wanting to see me personally.
Before we go further on that point, let's go back to the point that, to the answer that you just gave earlier to Ms. Wenzel's question. I understand from the report of Werkmans or Workmans. Do you know whether they prefer to be called Workmans or Werkmans?
I don't know. I always call them worksmans, but other people call them werksmans.
Okay, all right. It seems from that report of Workmans or Werkmans that the report says that when they interviewed Mr. McBride, he said that he had not seen the first report when he signed the second report. But they say that you contradicted him when they interviewed you. And in this regard, if I'm not mistaken, they say that you said he instructed you to retrieve the docket, and from that they seem to infer that he must have seen the first report. Did you say to them that he had seen the first report?
Chairperson, I still remember very well that they wanted to know whether when he wanted an update, I had handed him a copy of the report.
Of the first report?
Of the first report. But I indicated to them that I handed a copy to Mr. Sissoko, who might have handed to McBride.
Who might have handed it
to McBride.
Yes.
I never saw whether he handed
did or
not.
Yes.
And yesterday when I was testifying, I indicated that there was a report which was sent to Mr. Sissoko on the 23rd, which means that report had already changed. So if I can say what I handed to Sissoko was a January report, I would not really be very correct on the basis that they had that slight change, only on recommendation, that we cannot place General Sevilla at the scene.
But the short answer is that you don't know whether or not Mr. McBride did see the first report before signing the second report.
I do not know, Chairperson.
Yes, he may or he may not. You don't know.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Cooper, just to clarify, the report that you sent to Mr. Sissoko, was that what we are now calling the amended report?
That's correct.
So it wasn't the first report, it was the amended report.
That's correct.
And do you know whether Mr. McBride saw the amended report before signing the second report?
I do not know.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Now, if you could now please deal with the telephone call you received from the Minister's personal assistants dealt with in paragraph 81 of your statement, page 25.
I received a call from the personal assistant to the minister. It was Minister Ntleko, and she made it clear that she is the personal assistant of the minister. And she told me that the minister wanted to meet me personally. I then requested to know what was that about. She just gave me a highlight to say it's about the rendition. Then I informed her that I would need permission from the executive director, Mr. McBride, and I cannot be able to just go and meet with the minister. Then she suggested, and that was, I think, on the subsequent call, she suggested and said to me, the minister would want to meet with you in Cape Town over the weekend. They will arrange transportation. And McBride will never know. Then on Sunday you will be back, and then on Monday you'll be able to report on duty. Now, I indicated to her that it does not matter whether it's over the weekend, because if I come there, I will be discussing issues pertaining to the department, and the accounting officer must know.
And what was her response to that?
No, she indicated to me that she will talk to the minister again. That is when, on the following day, I received a call from the minister himself. Both these numbers were saved in my cell phone, and I still have them today.
Okay, and therefore, you would you have even the exact date when you received these calls?
I
Or not
may
the dates?
not remember, but it may appear somewhere, because
Yes.
shortly after that, I had spoken to the executive director. There were some,
Mr. McBride.
There were some documents which were done. I think they might have captured the date. I cannot, but now I cannot remember the date.
But it
What
was
I have,
March.
it's-
But it was March 2015.
That's correct.
Yes. Okay.
But
So
the
you
exact date I can't remember.
received a call from the minister himself, Mr. Ntleko.
Yes.
Yes. And what did he say in the telephone call?
His call lasted it might be less than, not even a minute. He just said, I want you to cooperate with Versman. And then I said, okay. And then he terminated the call.
Oh, at that stage, had you been, had Werkmans been in touch with you at that stage?
Yes,
They had been in touch with you.
that's correct.
But had you had an interview with them already or not yet?
No, I had not yet had the interview with them. They
Yes.
just called me requesting me to attend
An interview, yes.
And I referred them to
To the executive
the
director?
executive director.
Oh. And what was their response when you referred them to the executive director?
At some stage, there was some exchange, I think, of emails between them and Mr. Sisoko. Because I also indicated to them that even though the executive director is the head of the department, Sisoko is the direct supervisor, and I report direct to him. So I gave them, I think, the email of Mr. Sisoko, and then they started liaising with him.
And if you look at the time when you had that interaction with Werkmans and the time or the date when the minister spoke to you and said he wanted you to cooperate with Werkmans, how much time had lapsed? Do you have a recollection? A week, 2 weeks, a few days?
I cannot remember, but the time lapse there was not really huge, on the basis that after I indicated that I would not be able to meet with the minister in Cape Town, McBride was then suspended.
Was that like in a few days' time? After
It
the
did not
call?
take a month, but I cannot really
Yes.
quantify in terms
Yes.
of days.
Oh, but maybe around a month or so after
Less
the
than
call.
Let's say
Less than a month?
weeks.
Weeks, yeah. Okay. So, did you get the impression that where Werkmans had reported to the minister that you had referred them to Mr. McBride when they wanted you to come for an interview.
I just got an indication that probably Versman had contacted him. That's why he had to contact me.
And he must have formed the view that you were not cooperating with them
That's correct.
and thought it was necessary that he should make the call personally to you. And actually, he had wished to have a meeting with you in
That's
Cape
correct.
Town.
That's correct.
He must have made the call because you kept on saying that you would need Mr. McBride's permission.
That's correct. But I need to indicate clearly, Chairperson, that it is not the minister himself who proposed Cape Town. It is the PA saying the minister wants to meet me with me in Cape Town.
Yes, no, I understand that completely, but obviously she was conveying to you what the minister had asked her because she was the PA's minister and she was, I'm saying it could have been a he, had been sent by the minister to call you and ask you to come to Cape Town. Otherwise, the PA wouldn't say come to Cape Town unless the minister wanted you to come to Cape Town.
That's correct.
Yes. And was this the first time that you were speaking to the minister?
That's correct.
Yes. But what he had to say was just brief. I want you to cooperate with Werkmans.
That's correct.
When he came on when he phoned, when you were phoned by his PA who then said, please hold on for the minister, or did he phone and you picked up the call, you didn't know the number, and he said, this is the Minister of Police, or I'm Nathi Nhleko, the Minister of Police, I would like you to cooperate with the Werkmans. How did he introduce himself to you?
He phoned directly. They were
Yes.
having different numbers.
Yes. Was that on a cell phone or on a landline?
He used a cell phone.
A cell phone, okay. So how did he start the conversation with you?
He introduced himself
In what way?
to say that he's the Minister of Police. And I could hear their voice because I think few weeks he had come to our office and addressed us.
Okay.
So I was really familiar with his voice.
With his voice, yes. And then he just said he would like you to cooperate with Werkmans.
That's correct.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kuba, after Mr. McBride was suspended, who replaced him?
It was Mr. Israel Hamanyane.
And
I'm sorry, Ms. Wenzel. Did you see the direct approach by the minister to you as opposed to him talking to the executive director to pass on a message to you as something unusual or strange, or did you see nothing unusual?
For me, it was very unusual because politicians normally will not communicate with the staff. They may communicate with heads of department because they report direct to them. So I felt that probably he wanted me to do something without Mr. McBride knowing.
And Mr. McBride never told you anything along the lines that the minister did approach him to ask him to release you to go and see him in Cape Town?
No, he didn't.
And if that had happened, he probably would have told you?
That's correct.
Did you get any impression that the minister was trying to bypass the executive director on this matter, on the rendition matter.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Kuba, you say in paragraph 83 on page 26 of your statement that hereafter you went to Dumenokwe Chambers in Sandton and met with Advocate William Mokari, SC. Could you explain what happened at that meeting? Firstly, who told you to go and what happened?
Shortly after the appointment of Mr. Khamanyane as the acting executive director, I was told by him to go to Dumenokwe Chambers in Sandton to meet with Advocate William Mokari. In the morning, I went there as I was instructed. And when I arrived at the reception, I just sat there and waited for him. He came down and never requested me to go with him to his office. He spoke with me at the reception. He was standing, and I was standing up because I was shaking his hand.
Oh, is that Mr. Khamanyane?
No, that is Advocate Mokari at Dumenokwe Chambers.
Oh, in his chambers.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Yeah.
Now, he requested me to make a support affidavit, a confirmatory affidavit in support of the minister. I then refused, and I told him that if I do that, I will be lying. And he did not say anything. He said, no, it's fine, you can go back. And then I left. It was the shortest meeting I had. Then I went back.
Now,
Had you seen the minister's affidavit that he was asking you to sign a confirmatory affidavit about?
I had not yet seen it. Even now,
Yes.
I don't know that affidavit.
Yeah, but how could you say if you signed a confirmatory affidavit you'd be lying if you had not yet seen what the minister's affidavit said or was saying?
I said that on the basis that this issue was on the media and the minister had a version of what happened. So now it immediately came to my awareness that what I have to confirm is what he has been speaking
In the
publicly.
media, yes.
And that was not the true reflection of what happened.
And in brief, what was the version that you had seen in the media being attributed to the minister?
The version is that McBride influenced me to alter the report. The report was deleted to suit the recommendation that NPA cannot charge Dramat and Sibiya.
Okay.
did you hereafter attend further interviews with Waxmans or Worksmans?
That's correct. I had 3 interviews with them. And in my first meeting with them, they assured me, it was a panel of 3 or 4, I think 3, and they assured me that the investigation they were doing will not result in a criminal or departmental recommendation against me or resulting in me being charged. And I said, is there a need for me to be legally represented? And they said no. I did not record that. But we had discussed this at length with Mr. Sissoko. And Sissoko said, you must not forget, we need to raise this issue. And I thought they captured it in their record. For some reason, I did not see that appearing. And that is when I started to be free to talk to them after that assurance.
Were they recording you?
That's correct.
Yes. So from their recording, whatever you said in terms of this issue should appear.
That's correct.
Do you know whether it does appear in their transcripts, or have you not had a chance to?
I checked the transcript because we once requested them when we were being charged, but we could not get the audio. They sent the transcribed record, and that part did not appear.
Did you ask for the audio and they didn't provide it, or did you not ask for it?
I think we might have asked for it, but let me say I'm speaking under correction now.
Yes, okay.
But my common sense tells me that if you are to do a you want to compare the
Yes.
difference between what is transcribed, because
Yes.
some words cannot be as audible as one may think.
Yeah. But do you have a clear recollection whether when you raised that issue, namely, could this result in me being disciplined or being charged? Do I need a lawyer here? Do you have a clear recollection that at that stage the recording was on? Because it having been the first thing you raised, it may well be that you raised it before the proceedings started formally, and therefore it might not have been captured.
I did, after they introduced themselves, they indicated that they are on record, and then they introduced each other. Then I started asking the question. And that part, I was fortunate enough because Mr. Sissoko had a separate recording, which he used himself, and that was captured.
Your one, as opposed to Mr. Sissoko's one.
His one.
Yeah.
And it just gave me a consolation
Yes.
that I could not record, but our situation was just exactly the same.
But is your answer to my question that you do know that it was recorded, and therefore if the audio recording could be accessed, it will be there, or it should be there? Or are you saying you are not sure?
I'm sure that if it's recorded, it's there. But let me just give a little bit of just...
Well, I'm sorry before you do that. Okay. You see, my question is whether if we get the recording, we are likely to find it there unless there's been interference, as far as you know, and that depends, one, on whether you know that when you raise that point, the recording had started, or you don't know.
What I can say, Chairperson, is that after they introduced themselves, that is when I indicated that part regarding legal representation. But the point that I'm coming to, Chairperson, is that I'm not sure whether but the recording was there in front of me. Yes. So that part I may not know.
Yeah, or whether
it
the
was
recording was on or not.
I cannot really tell
yes.
that part.
But you said something earlier on about them saying we are on record.
That's correct.
Was that before you raised the point?
That was before they raised the point, because they indicated they had a way where they did their things. They would firstly indicate the day.
Yeah.
And they mentioned the date, and then after that, they would say they were on record.
Yes, but what I'm asking is whether, when, as far as you can remember, when they said we are on record, whether that was before or after you had raised the point to say, do I need a lawyer to represent me here? Am I at risk for a disciplinary charge or criminal charge?
What I can say, I think it was after they said they were on record. But what I remember vividly is that it's after they introduced themselves.
Okay, thank you. I think attempts should be made to try and get the record, the audio.
Yes, we'll
Yeah.
make a note of that.
Okay.
Now, after the interviews, Worksman's produced a report which appears at the bundle page 178.
Before you deal with the report, Ms. Ransom,
Yes.
you will recall that yesterday I indicated that I would like Mr. McBride, Mr. Sissoko, and Mr. Kuna to look at the report properly and submit affidavits that deal with the findings of the report and the reasons given for the findings relating to them. Now, I don't know whether in regard to Mr. Kuba, you propose to deal with those issues with him now while he's on the witness stand, or whether you propose to let him also go and do that, submit that, and an affidavit that does so, of course, with him, Mr. McBride and Mrs. Sogo, if there's a need for any one of them or all of them to be called back to deal with that aspect, that can be done. Have you applied your mind as to how you propose to deal with it?
Chair, I was going to deal with it with the witness because there's a great deal of what is said in the report is based upon what they say they were told by Mr. Kuba.
Yes.
There is also part of these papers a confirmatory affidavit that Mr. Kuba deposed to in support of McBride in his disciplinary proceedings. In that affidavit, he deals with comprehensively all the things,
yes,
the grounds upon which Worksmen say they came to their final conclusion that the report had been altered.
Okay.
And because of that, I think that perhaps he's in a position to deal with it.
That's fine. And Mr. Kuba, you are ready to deal with this report properly?
I think I'm okay. We dealt with it.
Yes.
But I think what will be a little bit of a challenge would be if I get more time, the recollection is enhanced.
Yes.
In terms of certain things.
Yes.
Because how I articulated it in a confirmatory affidavit, it was when things were still fresh.
Yes. Well, of course, when things were still fresh would mean that you had a better recollection of what had happened.
That's correct.
So you said something about if you have more time.
More time to go through that confirmatory affidavit and the report itself.
Yes, okay. You haven't had time to do that comprehensively of late.
I did it last night because that is when you raised it, Chairperson.
Yes.
But
you would prefer to have more time.
Then if I can have a little bit of indulgence, it would really make the difference.
Yes. Yeah. No, I would want you to do that because you see that report is important with regard to the role of Werksmans on this whole issue. And I will give Werksmans an opportunity. I think Mr. July will need to be called to give evidence and to give their side of the story with regard to how they handled this and the conclusions that they reached he reached in the report. But I would like you, Mr. Sissoko and Ms. McBride, to really look at the report, how it dealt with issues, what it says about each one of you, and what findings it makes, what the reasons are that are given for each finding against you, and against the material that Werksmans had before them in relation to what statements did they have, what documents did they have, on which their findings were supposed to be made. So I would be inclined to give you that opportunity, because I think that the minister and Mr. Khamanyane, or the minister, must have made the decisions to suspend, or was it the acting director? I can't remember now who made the decision to suspend. The three of you must have made that on the basis of that report, and the three of you were put through quite a difficult situation, and I would like you to be able to deal with it quite properly, so that when I evaluate all the evidence about how the three of you were dealt with, and how the minister, what role the minister played, what role Werksmans played, what role Mr. Khamanyane played, and everybody, I have a full picture. So that's what I'm inclined to do. What do you say, Mrs. Wenzel?
I've got no difficulty with that approach whatsoever. The only thing, Chair, is there are one or two aspects in the report that I would like to draw to your attention and also to the attention of the witness, which don't deal specifically with the allegations against him or things that they say he said.
Yes. No, that's fine. That's fine.
So if we could have regard to page, the report, Chair, starts at page 178.
178? Yes.
And then if you can go to page 182 of the bundle, and you'll see the introduction. It says, the officers of Werksmans has been mandated by the Honourable Minister of Police, Mr. Nati Nhleko, to conduct an investigation into the report submitted by IPID, which deal with the rendition. But the terms of reference for the investigation are very important, Chair. They say, in conducting the aforesaid investigation, the Minister has provided Werksmans with the following terms of reference. Your terms of reference in the investigation are the following, sub 1, and they're quoting, it would appear, from the instruction from the Minister. Who and under what circumstances was the original report altered, or how the second report came about with both reports signed by the same person, i.e. Mr. Kuba, whether any misconduct or offence has been committed, and if so, by whom? Whether there is a prima facie evidence of misconduct and criminal liability by Lieutenant Ramat, Major Sabia, and any other officers mentioned in the original report, the circumstances under which the report and the docket was handed to the NPA, and what happened to the docket whilst in the NPA's possession, And 5, any other matter that might come to your attention during the investigation which relevant to your conclusions and findings. Now, to me, and the way that I read this, if it is correct that, as you and Mr. Sissoko say, that you were told that you were not being investigated and there was no prospect of you being investigated for any misconduct or wrongdoing or offense even, this would seem not to be correct, because their terms of reference were specifically whether any misconduct or offense has been committed, and if so, by whom.
Yes.
The other aspect...
Maybe what one can ask is whether Werksmans at any stage before the interview started told you what their terms of reference were.
That part, Chairperson, I cannot remember.
You cannot remember?
I cannot remember.
Yes. Okay. Do you know when for the first time you saw in writing what their terms of reference were? Whether it was when you saw their report for the first time, or whether you got to know the terms of reference at some stage as they are put here?
That part, Chairperson, it's very difficult to say because I cannot remember whether they show me there, but I saw it in this report. When I read the report, I saw it.
Yes. Okay, all right, thank you.
Chair, the second aspect I wanted to deal with is what you testified to yesterday. You were explaining what the purpose and role was of an IPID report and what you understood the role was of the NPA once they received the report.
That's correct.
And just apropos of that, I would like you to comment on this. If we can have regard to page 196.
What page?
196. In paragraph 3.1.2, it says what you've stated. The first report was compiled by Kuba with the assistance of Makankwe and the guidance of Musing and Mulitse. In this section, we elucidate the circumstances under which this report was produced by Kuba and Makankwe. Our explanation of the circumstances under which this report was produced is based on the interviews conducted with Kuba, Makankwe, and Musing. But then they state this: it is important to state that the Special Projects Division in the Office of the NDPP was tasked to provide guidance to Kuba and Makankwe during the course of their investigation. The Special Projects Division is headed by Musing, assisted by Mulitse. The role of Musing and Mulitse was never to make a decision on whether to prosecute or not. Can you comment on that?
This part is it's very misleading because my experience when I deal with prosecutors who are guiding the case, quite often they are the ones who will take the decision on the matter, and they model out that case in terms of what they can really prove in court. Now, this also comes to the issue of the guidance of the report to say, here, they indicate that the Advocate Musing and Mulitse were guiding this report. But the truth of the matter is that it's IPID that needs to make that report without the involvement of any advocate from the NPA. Because it's like when I'm writing a letter to you, but you write a letter to yourself. You're communicating to yourself. So it was supposed to be an independent one. But I've already given a justification because of the closeness we had. It just became so normal, that it flew, that they started commenting and
But who said that Mr. Mosing was the person who was going to guide the investigation? Who came with that? From whom did you hear that for the first time?
For the first time, when I had a meeting with Colonel Mukango at Empire's Palace, that meeting was aimed at him explaining to me the investigation he did, what was outstanding, what needed to be done. So that is when he said there are prosecutors who are already guiding this investigation. And he gave me their name and their numbers.
And Mr. Mosing was one of them.
That's correct.
And did you initiate communication between the two of you, or did he call you at some stage? Or is that something you can't remember?
I remember because once I was given the number, I called him.
Oh, okay.
That's correct.
And you confirmed from him that he was, he had a role in this investigation, and that role was to guide the investigation.
I cannot remember whether I confirmed, but
Yes.
I indicated that I'm now investigating this case, which I heard that he was dealing with, and then we scheduled a meeting from there.
Okay, and that's how you then cooperated throughout.
That's correct.
Was it the first time that you were involved in an investigation under IPED where a member of the NPA was playing an active role during the investigation?
No, I think there was a certain investigation, like the Ketomena, which I indicated that I investigated first. That is when I started to know Advocate Mosing. But at that time, we put dockets together and he told us what needed to be done. But I think I had only 1 or 2 meetings with him. Then after that, they put another person who was Advocate Matenjwa. So Advocate Matenjwa came at a time when I was already on exit. Then I had to meet with him. That's the advocate who was very, very close, who was telling them on a daily basis what to do. But most of the activities I cannot really attest to because I used to get telephone call from the team members. We still had a link, even though I was not there. They would tell me what was happening. Somehow I used to advise.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kuba, if you could then have a look at page 200, paragraph 3.1.21. This is another issue that you dealt with extensively yesterday.
Page 200,
200.
What paragraph?
3.1.21.
Have you got it, Mr. Kuba? The paragraph?
I got
Okay.
It says here, according to Kuba, the first report was submitted as a final report, and they expected the NPA to take further action as required by law on the basis of their recommendations set out therein. Can you comment on that?
That's correct. During the interview, as I indicated...
Well, Ms. Wenzel, that would form part of what he's going to deal with.
It is, but
Yes.
it's only that he was debating yesterday. He said he was party to drafting the IPED statute. And he said in terms of that statute, they are not required by law to take the recommendations that IPED sends them. if you remember, he said there was this distinction.
Did you have a look at the statute?
I actually didn't get a chance as yet.
I
Because
suggest
I've
you
been
have a
trying
look
to do
at
that.
it
I
first
will.
before you ask him.
Yes.
Because that will be much more helpful. I saw something quoted in the Versman's report, which may be relevant to what he was saying, and it might. I didn't understand it to be consistent with what he said, but he will get a chance to deal with everything that refers to him here in the report by way of an affidavit. And he will have had a chance to reflect on everything. And probably he will need to come back after submitting that affidavit, and then it deals openly with all of these issues. So it seems to me that as far as the report is concerned, we should not go further. Let him go and do
Yes.
their homework, submit that affidavit,
Sure.
then we will call him again. Then he can deal with all of these issues. And in the meantime, also, Mr. McBride and Mr. Sissoko can do the same. But as far as other matters are concerned, I think you can still ask other questions if there are other matters other than the contents of the report.
Yes, it was only with regard to the
the
cell phone
report.
records, but
Yes.
I'll deal with that
Yes.
when he testifies again.
Okay, no, that's fine. Would that then place us at a stage where I can release him for now?
Not quite yet.
Not yet, yeah, okay.
But
Oh, I thought you said there was nothing else. It was just the report you wanted to deal with.
no, I just need a few issues.
Yes,
I'm
no,
not to
that's
go in a
fine.
lot of
You can
detail.
deal with them, yeah.
Thank you. We know that Worksman's recommended that you, McBride, and Sissoko be criminally charged for defeating the ends of justice or obstructing the administration of justice, and that disciplinary charges be brought against you in your capacity as employees. Now, you will deal with the report and you'll deal with that recommendation. If you can go now to paragraph 87 on page 27 of your report,
Of his affidavit.
of his affidavit, I'm sorry,
What page?
27, Chair.
Yes.
And there it is said that around November 2014, Mr. Sissoko, Mr. McBride, and I had a meeting with the reference group appointed by the minister. Could you just explain what happened at that meeting and what happened thereafter?
We had the meeting with the reference group, and they indicated that they were set up by the minister to look into policing matters. One of the members of the reference group was known to me because I worked with him summarily in KZN, investigating Ketomena, and that's Advocate Matenjo. He gave me a call the other day after the meeting, and he said to me he wants the copies of the rendition docket. He was mentioning it in a, like as if he was demanding it. But I never had a problem with it because we had some dealings in the past. Probably was so free to talk to me. I refused, and I told him, and I still remember I was like, I said, no, you need to speak with
The executive director.
the executive director.
Yes.
That's what happened.
And what did he say?
He said it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you then deal with your suspension, which you start to deal with from paragraph 88 of your report?
Chairperson, in May 2015, that was the 21st of May, I received a letter of precautionary suspension signed by the then acting executive director, Mr. Khamanyane. The letter was served to me by Ms. Netsianda. That was after McBride was suspended around March 2015. Now, she gave me a telephonic call and told me that she wanted to serve the suspension letter, and apparently the minister wanted me to receive that letter. Now, at that time, she indicated that she was driving, it was very late. And I knew that she was going to cover between 200 or 250 to 300 kilometers to arrive in Polokwane.
And when you say at that time, that which I assume you mean at the time she phoned you, you say it was very late. Around what time would you think it was?
I think it might have been around 3 or 4 o'clock, because she was leaving Pretoria, I think, around that time.
Yes, to go to Limpopo.
That's correct.
Yes, okay, continue.
And then I said, it's fine, whatever time you arrive, I'm going to wait for you. And then the call was recorded. I also sent it to the company that transcribed it. And she also deposed a statement confirming that, because I made her to listen the call. I still remember the day I made it listen. She just said, "You are a witch. Why did you record me?" So she said, "I'm putting her at a very difficult position."
Yes.
And I said, "Even if you don't give a statement, I have your
recording."
Yeah, but the statement was not given direct to me. I think she did a confirmatory to either McBride or Mr. Sissoko.
So where she said the minister wanted you to receive the letter of suspension that day, was that captured in the recording as well?
It was.
Yes. Do you have any idea why, if the decision to suspend you was that of the acting executive director, namely Mr. Khamanyane, why the minister would have an interest that you receive the letter of suspension on that day? What did that have to do with him?
I'm not really sure, but since previously I had received a call from the minister, I realized that probably the acting executive director was just being
Was just an instrument.
an instrument to achieve that goal.
These were these were decisions being taken by the minister.
That's correct. And probably to add on that, Chairperson, if I had not had an experience where the minister called me directly, it would have been another issue. But because he had called me, I realized that these things are above the
Executive director.
executive director.
Yes.
It's no longer the interest of the department. There's somewhere where there are interests that are being served.
Yes.
And I was not aware of those, what the kind of interest they were serving.
Yes. If you had not, you say if you had not received the call from the minister directly earlier on, it would have been another issue. What do you mean? How would you have taken this interest of the minister in you being served with a letter of suspension on a particular day?
Normally, I would not really have, I would have doubted the words of the person.
Yes.
Not necessarily. I would thought that probably she's just trying to make the situation big so that I feel compelled
to cooperate.
to cooperate. But the previous call, I realized what I was dealing with.
So the letter was signed, letter of suspension, and I know I'm jumping now. The letter of suspension was signed by Mr. Khamanyane,
That's correct.
suspending you.
That's correct.
But the chief director Miss Netsianda, who came to serve it, who called you to say he had a letter to give to you, said that the minister wanted this letter served on you on the particular day. Is that right?
That's correct.
And, okay, and you say when the call came, it must have been around 3 in the afternoon.
That's correct.
So you said you would wait for her.
That's correct.
Okay, continue.
If you have regard to page, 25.
I'm sorry, I think you don't want him to continue how Ms. Netsianda then reached Limpopo and served first, or is there something that you want to deal with before that?
It's about exactly what he's testifying now. I want to show him the transcript of this conversation.
Oh, okay, okay.
If you could have regard to page 253.
253.
Yes.
253.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, this is not a certified transcript. You've said you recorded this. When was this transcribed?
It was transcribed. I did it in Polokwane, but it was, I think it was some weeks after the incident, or it took a bit of time before, I cannot remember exactly when, but it was sometimes after this call, but I did it in Polokwane.
And did you personally transcribe it?
Yes, and I think I can go to their company and get any record probably regarding this matter.
Okay, and it's also confirmed in an affidavit by Netsianda, Ms. Netsianda, but if we can just have a look at what is said at line 10. Well, let's start at the beginning. She says, yes, Mr. Kuba, how are you? I'm fine, okay. I've been asked inaudible, where are you? I must come and serve you with a letter. Okay, I'm in Polokwane. You are in Polokwane, yes. Because apparently the minister said that you must have the letter today, and I am still in the office, which means I must drive right now. Will you wait for me, and then I will call you when I'm closer so that we can meet somewhere? Yes, yes. Okay, no, thank you so much for your understanding. Okay, thank you, sure, yes. And then, if we have regard to an affidavit that was proposed...
I'm sorry.
Yes?
Maybe, just in case we didn't ask this, you confirm that substantially this transcript reflects the conversation that took place between you and Ms. Netsianda?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you.
And Mr. Kubi, if you can then look at a confirmatory affidavit that was deposed to in the disciplinary proceedings in the matter between IPID and Mr. Sissoko on page 257. And at page 258, paragraph 3, she says, I confirm in addition that upon receiving instructions from, I hereby confirm same insofar as they relate to me regarding circumstances around the handling of a letter to Mr. Kuba. I confirm in addition that upon receiving instructions from the current acting executive director, Mr. Kahamanyani, he specifically told me in no uncertain terms that the aforesaid letter must be delivered to Mr. Kuba that same day, and that those were the specific instructions of the minister. At IPID, when we refer to the term minister, it is the Minister of Police that we normally refer to. I duly complied with the instruction and called Mr. Kuba to arrange for delivery of the letter as properly articulated in the annexure to Mr. Sissoko's affidavit marked MS6.
That's correct.
Now, is it correct?
Well, Ms. Wenzel, you said something earlier on about where, I think in response to which Mr. Kuba may have said that he will need to go back to the people who transcribed that conversation. Is that right? Or did I misunderstand?
I'm
In
not
response to which I understood him to be saying he would go to the people who made the transcription.
Oh, yes.
Yes. What was that about? It seems to be quite clear, especially with the affidavit.
Yes.
I'm not sure if we need anything further.
I don't think we probably need anything further.
Yes. Yeah, no, I don't think so, yeah. Because the person who had a conversation with Mr. Kuba has confirmed in an affidavit the relevant part.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. After you received your notice of suspension, did you thereafter participate in a disciplinary hearing?
Or maybe let's connect it to where he was before we went to the transcript. Ms. Netsianda left Pretoria and drove to Pretoria to serve the letter on you, is that right?
Yeah, he came to Polokwane. from
Polokwane,
Pretoria.
yes. And he served you with the letter.
That's correct.
Yeah. In the conversation that the two of you may have had, is there anything of importance that you want to mention?
What she did was to appreciate my understanding and also compromising because I had to fit within her schedule. I also had to gather all the things that I had to hand over to her. I had a laptop, I had a 3G card, those things that I was using, I had to hand over the items. And I still remember she arrived, it was late, very late.
Around what time in the evening?
I do not know whether it's 8 or 9.
Yes,
But
okay.
it was late.
Okay.
So I went, she phoned me.
Well, from Pretoria to Limpopo, is it not about 3 hours or thereabout, or is it 2 hours?
It's around 3 hours, but I do not know what caused further delay.
Okay.
Because when she came, I saw she was with the husband.
Okay.
So
okay.
I realized probably she might have
Gone home first.
gone home first.
Yeah.
But she came late to
Okay.
to Polokwane.
But other than that, there is nothing of consequence that transpired in the conversation when you met with her.
No, and also from my side, I could not talk.
Yes.
For me, it was, I was not settled because it was my first time in my 16 or 17 years career in the IPID to be getting that.
A suspension letter.
Yeah, so I was really unsettled. So I could not really formulate any discussion
Yes.
about
yes.
anything.
Yes.
Just-
Did the letter of suspension, or did the news that you are being suspended come as a shock to you, or not really?
It was a shock. It was a big shock.
Okay. Thank you. Have we got the letter of suspension here?
Yes, we have.
Let's go to it.
The letter of suspension is Annexure HIK 15. If you just bear with me, I don't seem to have put a reference to be 250 something. It's page 382. Mr. Kuba, is that your letter of suspension?
That's correct.
If you have a look at the,
Well, I think it appears from the first paragraph of the letter that we might have skipped a step earlier. Prior to receiving the letter of suspension, did you receive a letter in terms of which you were asked to make representations why you should not be suspended?
That's correct.
Yes, and did you consult with attorneys who helped you to prepare such representations?
That's correct.
Yes, and you submitted the representations to Mr. Hamanyana?
That's correct.
Yes, and the letter that had asked you to make those representations had come from Mr. Hamanyana? The letter that had asked you to make the representations, did it come from him?
Yeah, all the correspondence, I think they were coming from Mr. Kamanyan.
Yes, yes. I get the impression that in making that point, you are emphasizing that the decisions might not have come from him, but the correspondence was coming from him.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
Sure.
You think the decisions were coming from where?
I think the decisions were coming from people outside the department. And in this case, I suspect the minister.
Okay, all right. And Ms. Wenzel, have we got that letter here, the letter that preceded the letter of suspension?
I don't believe so, but I've just verified.
Because we should also have a copy of the representations that he made.
Yes.
We don't have them either here.
No, Chair, I don't remember seeing it myself. But
Would you have that letter somewhere and the representation somewhere?
I think if I try, Chairperson, I can also get it from the lawyer.
Yeah, from your lawyers,
Because he might be having a...
Yeah, try and get those and send them to the legal team.
Thank you, Chair.
Because it will be important to see what was said in that letter to which you needed to respond, and to also see how you responded in order to evaluate the decision to go ahead and suspend you nonetheless. Okay. Okay, proceed.
Thank you, Chair. In paragraph 91, page 28 of your statement, you say that on the 19th of June 2015, you deposed to a supporting affidavit in the High Court in the matter between Mr. McBride and the Minister of Police. Could you have regard to page 260? And confirm whether this is the supporting affidavit that you referred to.
That's correct.
And Chair, it is also in this supporting affidavit that certain issues and aspects with regard to the worksman's report are dealt with, but that we will canvass at a later stage.
Yes, no, that's fine.
Then on the 7th of July 2015, you were served with a notice to attend a disciplinary inquiry, and that appears at page 284. Is that correct? Is that the notice?
That's the one.
Could you please tell the chair what happened at that disciplinary inquiry?
I'm sorry. So you were called to a disciplinary inquiry, and effectively, a senior counsel, Advocate William Mukari, SC, and a junior counsel, Mr. Tembeka Ncukaitobi, instructed by Hogan Lovel's attorneys, were appointed effectively to be the prosecutors to prosecute you in the disciplinary inquiry.
That's
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Had there been any disciplinary inquiries of IPID personnel before the disciplinary inquiries of yourself and Mr. McBride and Mr. Sissoko?
I think they were. I think they were, but
Did IPID always bring senior counsel to prosecute its staff in disciplinary inquiries?
what I can say, Chairperson, is that the one that I remember, I don't think they did not bring the person who is at this level.
Yes.
So
I
now-
mean, senior counsel is a very high level of an advocate, somebody who has been an advocate for many years, and somebody who is very good, and somebody also who doesn't come cheap.
Yeah. Chairperson, I understand that, but I think I looked at it to say if really you want to draw blood from the stone, you need experts probably. Because you get your normal people, they may not be able to achieve that with ease. Yeah.
But is your answer that there had been disciplinary inquiries involving IPID personnel before this, the organization had brought outside lawyers, but not at the level of senior counsel? Is that what you are saying?
Yeah, I don't remember where they brought a heavyweight like this.
Yes, a heavyweight. But did they always or often or sometimes bring an outside lawyer?
It was not often,
Yes.
but also considering that our department, most especially on a higher level, you don't really get a lot of misconduct cases.
Yes, yes,
It will be
yes.
once after a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
The ones that you can remember, namely disciplinary inquiries before that had happened before your one and Ms. McBride's one and Mr. Soko's one, you would think would have been how many more or less that you can remember that had happened? 2, 3, or more or less, even if it's not an exact number?
There was one which was done for the person who was in a provincial head for KZN, and the one which was done for the provincial head of Eastern Cape. But this, I don't think they brought any senior person.
Any senior lawyer from
Any senior
outside?
lawyer, any senior lawyer, because we are very economical with our budget.
Yes.
Yeah.
But do you know whether they brought any lawyer from outside at all, or on the internal people were used?
That one I cannot really.
Because that's the important part, that whether It was the first time that outside lawyers were brought to in regard to disciplinary inquiries when your inquiry, Mr. Sogo's inquiry, Mr. McBride's inquiry happened, or whether it was not the first time, but it had happened before, but rarely, but even then maybe not senior lawyers such as these.
I remember, most especially on a KZN1, because it was coinciding with the time when I was going to assist the province. But I cannot remember what was the level of that person. I cannot remember.
Okay, during the interval that is going to be there before you come back, please find out that information. How many disciplinary inquiries had there been before your one and Mr. McBride's one, Mr. Sogo's one? Did it involve outside lawyers?
Okay.
Who were they? What was their level?
Okay.
And so on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now, just for the record, Advocate Macquarie was the same advocate who you say a month or two prior to this had asked you to depose to a confirmatory affidavit in favor of the minister.
That's correct.
And that was in proceedings against Mr. McBride.
That's correct.
Now, do you remember when the disciplinary proceedings were ultimately held?
The disciplinary inquiry was held on the 17th of July 2015, but on that day it was postponed. We finally had it on the, it was set for the 13th, 14th, and 17th of August. And we made an application for suspension of that hearing pending outcome of the Constitutional Court, which was brought about by McBride. And the chairperson dismissed that application. So
And the chairperson was Advocate Patrick Nguchana?
I think that's the one.
Yes.
He was the chairperson. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, we finally had it on the 22nd and 23rd of September 2015. What happened on that particular day, Mr. Sisoko could not avail himself because he was not well. Now, they requested that we need to separate this hearing so that they could have some progress. I was represented by Advocate Poko.
Advocate?
Poko.
Yes, or P-O-K-O, P-H-O-K-O. What's the spelling?
It's P-H-O-O-K-O.
Okay, yes.
Let me say, I might be just using the word advocate loosely, but it's a lawyer.
He's a lawyer.
Yeah,
So
it's
he
an
would be
attorney.
an advocate or an attorney, you are
Yeah,
not sure?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Now, what happened is that while we were there, Advocate Mukari went out with, he requested my lawyer to say, let's go out and have a discussion. It was after there was an issue of separating the hearings. Now, when they went out, he came in, but Mr. Poko called me and he says, come, I want to talk to you. Then I went out and he said to me, and I just want to indicate how he put it. He says, these people are proposing that we need to settle this case. And he used the word, Broer, they say if you continue, they're going to fire you. It does not matter what you're going to say. Now, that part...
I'm sorry, just repeat. He said Broer, if you what, they are going to fire you? They say if what, they are going to fire you?
If I continue,
With the hearing?
and lead evidence,
Yes,
they are going to fire me.
yes.
So they are proposing a,
Okay, no, just repeat that because it's important. You said something about no matter what or something like that. Just repeat exactly how he put it to you.
he said, no matter what evidence you are going to lead there, they are not going to take it. They are going to fire you. So it also gave me a bit of surprise on the basis that he was one person who was saying that he was enjoying doing my case. He said, this one is just going to be a walk in the park.
That's how that as you were preparing for.
As we were preparing,
yes,
because I was telling
he
him.
was confident. Yes,
He was very, very confident.
Yes, but now he said,
He said,
"This is what they are saying."
this is what they are saying. Now, I had a very lengthy discussion, and I said, I think I need to talk to Mr. Sissoko. I gave him a call. Sometimes we had a discussion with Mr. Sissoko's lawyer. And the discussion there was to discuss the issue of how we are going to do that. Because immediately when he said they were going to fire me, I started to panic. Because when you receive such type of information, the first thing that you think is how are you going to pay for your car? How are you going to pay for your house? You switch off completely from the amount of evidence that you can have because the fate has been decided. Now, I tried to speak to Mr. Sissoko, and Mr. Sissoko, he was warning me to say he does not think that it's a right idea.
To settle.
To settle.
Yeah.
And he also indicated that once you settle, they will take you as dishonest because you settle on a level that you accept this and you go back to work. Now, I went back to my lawyer. It was like to and fro. We were discussing, trying to find out. And my lawyer was telling me, do you want to keep your job? Let's just get these things wrapped up. And he was telling me that the way I spoke with the council, you are not going to make it. Whatever we are going to do, they are going to deal with you. Now.
And this is the same lawyer who, as you were preparing to come to the disciplinary hearing, was saying this is a walk in the park. Who was very confident.
That's correct.
Yes.
Now, I phoned my wife, I phoned my uncle. It was all calls all over. And
trying to get other people's views and so on.
That's correct. Now, it came to a part where what I did.
At this stage, as you were making these calls, had your lawyer told you whether there was an offer on the table that they were putting, the employer was putting on the basis of which they were saying, let's settle this matter? Or at that stage, they just wanted to find out whether, in principle, you would be agreeable to talking settlement, and if you were agreeable, they were still going to come up with an offer?
He told me immediately
Yes.
that they're going to give you a warning.
Yes.
A final warning, written
Yes.
warning. Now, and there was this.
Did he say what you would need to admit to in order for them to give you a warning? Or what it is they wanted from you? Because I assume if you were going to be given a warning, you were going to be required to admit that you are guilty of something.
That's correct.
What was that?
He said, I need to make a statement admitting to the wrongdoing of the report. Now, that part I refused from the onset. And I said, it can't be. because I will be lying. I did not do what they say I've done. Now, what he did, he also went back to Mukare and they discussed. But the following day, because I even stopped everything there and I said, I need to go and sleep on this issue.
Yes.
Yes.
On the first day of the hearing.
Yeah, I said I was going to sleep. They gave me a chance.
Yes.
Yeah.
So before I take it the disciplinary hearing was adjourned to enable you to go and sleep over the matter. Around what time of the day was it after you had been making calls to various people and there have been discussions between the advocates?
It was in the afternoon.
And you had met at what time? In the morning? At the
Can't
disciplinary
remember
hearing?
whether it was 9 or 10.
But it was in the morning.
It was in the morning.
So,
but when it
yeah.
was towards or in the afternoon, that is
Yeah.
when
Yes.
they indicated that, okay, we're going to give you an opportunity to go and think about it.
Yes.
Now, I went
And the matter was adjourned to the following day?
the following day.
Okay.
I went to the hotel. I continued with the calls.
As the proceedings were adjourned, at what stage were the discussions in terms of what you needed to do in order to have the matter settled? Now, initially they said, according to your lawyer, you would have to admit to wrongdoing in regard to the report. Had that changed to something else by the time you adjourned, or had that not changed as yet?
It had slightly changed because they were proposing something. They were trying to bend to what I was...
To compromise.
To compromise, because
Okay.
I said I cannot...
Admit to wrongdoing. Yes.
And they were slightly mentioning the issue of what if we do an agreement?
Oh, they were saying,
Yeah, an agreement.
what would you give? What were you prepared to give in order for there to be an agreement to settle? They were talking along, they were trying to find out if you were not prepared to admit to wrongdoing, what is it that you were prepared to admit?
That's correct. But
Yeah.
even the issue of the settlement agreement, they were the one who came up with, because that word was not even in my mind.
Yes, yes.
They're the one who came with it, and they indicated that if we do an agreement where this issue is resolved, we want you to come back to
You would keep your job.
you keep your job, you come back to work.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you, when you have been suspended for the first time, in your over 20 years experience in different sector or in government, I've never met that. To tell you the honest fact, my mind switched into survival mode. And I said, what do I do to save my family? But I was not ready to compromise the issue that I was not going to put a statement. Because I'm an investigator, I know you can't really put the statement on same issue different, because I said, this is the position, but I need to keep my job, I want my job back. Now, then I went to the hotel, and then I continue with the calls. And that time I was not only confined to only relatives. I was calling even the friends in government who have senior posts, because we normally communicate, and they were telling me that if they are giving you that deal, let me tell you one thing, with our government, they are going to fire you if they want to fire you. That was one of the friends, that's what he said to me.
Yes.
To say, with this government of ours, when they want to get rid of you,
They will get rid of
they'll
you.
get rid of you. It doesn't matter what you do.
Yes.
So now they are giving you a lifeline. At least
Take it.
You will carry this shame just for a bit, but
Yeah.
you will be back at work. Now,
Those were the sort of advices you were getting
I was
from people.
getting.
Yes.
Now, then the following day, then we had to engage in the issue of that settlement agreement. They went and drafted it.
Yes, overnight, when you came back in the morning, was there something that you made up your mind how you wanted to sort this out, or you just wanted the discussions to continue?
No, I had already decided that as long as whatever I'm going to sign, it is not going to make me to commit perjury. That's what I told myself.
Yes.
As long as
You didn't want to say anything that was not true.
That's correct.
Yes.
And my wife was very supportive of the fact that it's better to go back to work and really continue sustaining the family. Now, when I went back, they drafted it did not take too long, an agreement. Now, the agreement, the first page, it was talking about,
Sorry, let's go to the
The
agreement.
agreement is at page 287, Chair.
287.
Yes.
287.
Yes, okay, continue talking. I just wanted us to find where the agreement is for later, but I want you to continue to tell me how the discussions went up to the time that the agreement was signed.
When they brought the agreement, it was already typed. There was a
Was that before you told them what would be acceptable to you? Because you must have come back and your lawyer must have said, what did you think? What do you think? Are you prepared? Are you not prepared? And you must have told him something which he passed on to Mr. Mukhari.
They had something that has already been drafted.
Before you came.
Yeah,
Yes.
when I pointed some of the things, I do not know how it was changed.
Yes.
And then I was called to a smaller office to sit and discuss. Now, when it came back, now we discussed, and my lawyer was happy with it. He was really fine. Now, if you check the part of the agreement, it's where it talks about plea to the charges as per departmental hearing charges. But the issue there, when I got this report, I was still not comfortable. I was still not comfortable with this part.
When you signed.
When I signed, in fact, I said to my lawyer, when we were doing this, that this first page, I'm having a problem with it. But he indicated that this is agreement. There is nothing, it does not have any effect on what you said previously.
Yeah.
And they've already indicated that I'm free to testify in support of Mr. Sisoko.
Which was important to you.
Yeah, which was important to me. Now, I don't know, being out of sarcastic or what, but I took this agreement and do not want to sign the first page. And it was initialed by my lawyer. It was only the page where he initialed. And I signed the subsequent one. So my lawyer's initials are only on the first page.
Is that the one looking like?
MEP stand for Poco.
Oh, he initialed there.
Yeah, if you check that HI was basically for me when I was preparing this thing for this hearing.
Oh, so it was not there.
It was not there, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And MP or is it MS?
That MS is the police officer who certified the documents.
Oh, okay.
And then you have a signature towards the
But
corner.
didn't somebody initial it on this part on behalf of the employer? The first page.
It's initial at the corner there. If you check, there is a...
Yes, I see
it's fading.
that. Who did that? Do you know?
That is the head of legal services,
What's her name? His name?
Ms. Muraswi.
Oh,
Marianne
okay.
Muraswi.
Okay.
And if you check there, that signature there is similar to the one in the subsequent page, which is
On page
the
2.
second page.
Yes. So you had some discomfort with the first page,
I had a discomfort with the.
and you were not prepared to even initial it,
Yes,
and your lawyer initialed it,
that's correct.
but you signed the second page.
That's correct.
Was that your own way of trying to protect yourself by not signing a page that you were not comfortable with?
No, I was, for some reasons,
Yeah, you were just not comfortable.
I was just not, I knew that when I sign at the end, it
Yeah, it
binds
will
me,
mean,
of course.
yes, yes.
But the truth of the matter is that I was just really not comfortable.
You knew that it would bind you,
And it
but
seems as in terms of negotiation on the proposed offer, that was the cul-de-sac for us. There was no way I could go.
yes, Ms. Venzel?
Now, if we have regard to that letter that you signed, and I think it's important that we see what was actually said so that we can understand why you felt so uncomfortable. It says under the introduction, the first employee, Innocent Kuba, was charged with dishonesty in defeating the ends of justice, as more fully set out in the charge sheet attached here to marked A. Pursuant to the institution of disciplinary action against Mr. Kuba, the parties have reached agreement on the 23rd of September 2015. The parties wish to record in writing the terms of the agreement, which terms they record below. Under the terms of the agreement, Mr. Kuba, being legally represented, freely and voluntarily pleads guilty to the charges proffered against him, as set out in Annexure A. Is that the main part that made you feel very uncomfortable? Sorry, are you still looking for the page? It's 287. I didn't realize you closed your file.
That's correct.
Then it says the employer will impose a sanction of a final written warning valid for 6 months against Mr. Kuba. Mr. Kuba's suspension will be uplifted and he will report for duty on Monday, the 28th of September 2015. And then under 7, it says, despite the seriousness of the offence, the employer is satisfied that Mr. Kuba's candid and openness about the offence, the fact that he did not waste the employer's time by engaging in a protracted disciplinary inquiry, and his remorse to be a sufficient mitigation against a sanction of dismissal, which ordinarily would have been appropriate. How did you feel about that?
I'll just request you to just repeat that.
Oh, sure. Do you want to have a look at page 288?
Okay.
Well, he was looking at the agreement. Is that not what you want him to look
Yes,
at?
but he seemed to not. I noticed in
No,
page
I think it's your
through.
question. I think he had the agreement. You had the agreement. Eh?
I have the agreement.
Yeah, no, it was your
Yes.
question.
Oh,
I think
okay.
your question, let me say this. It would seem that the reason why you were uncomfortable with the first page is that it was saying you were pleading guilty to a charge of dishonesty and defeating the ends of justice. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yes, you were uncomfortable about that
I was very uncomfortable.
because your position was that you were not guilty of any dishonesty and you were not guilty of anything.
That's correct.
Is that right?
Chairperson. And actually, for me to look at the charges of dishonesty and look at what they were bargaining with me to say, this is the sanction. It could not really, could not balance. To say a warning when somebody says you have been dishonest in the department. Most especially at my level.
At your level,
I
yes.
would have expected the employer to say,
Yeah,
whatever may,
You
we
have
are
to
not
go.
really settling.
yes.
So I think the strategy was, they put a dangling carrot to say, we're going to give you this warning
Yes.
for this serious charge. And I took it on the basis that I felt a warning, but the charges which they were saying, they were very sad. They were not balanced. It was not proportional. Yeah.
Do you want to, could you just reiterate again your reasons for signing the agreement nevertheless?
The reason for signing
Despite your discomfort, despite your position that you were saying you were not guilty of anything, what were your reasons for signing nevertheless?
as I've indicated, and I think that part is squarely falling in my warning statement. Because I reflected exactly to how I reached that level. To such an extent that I said to myself, I've never been in that situation before with the department. I came from the private sector, and everywhere I go, I was the most abused employee. In terms of the work, because I had to do a lot of work. Now, the thing was, even though the position was so senior, the picture came that you took yourself to the university, the struggles, the pain, of which many people had been saying to me, you managed to reach a level where the position is regarded as a political, they normally appoint chief directors from a ruling party. And I'm there in this position, and I said, I'm just me. So that part, it kind of really took the sense of the implication. And I was stuck with the reality of how I reached there. It was difficult, but I never saw an alternative.
Chair, would this be
I
an
think we
appropriate
should
time?
adjourn.
Yes,
Yeah.
if we could.
We will adjourn and return at 25 to 12. We adjourn.
All rise.
Mr. Kuba, were you, during the course of these disciplinary proceedings, asked to sign an affidavit?
That's correct. The first,
I'm sorry, do you say in the course of these proceedings?
The disciplinary proceedings.
Disciplinary proceedings, okay, yeah.
I was, before the settlement agreement, the first thing which I was requested to do was to sign a statement acknowledging that I lied, I altered the report. That was done by Advocate Mukari. I refused. I said, no, I can't do that. And that is when the issue of the settlement agreement kicked in. Yeah.
Was that on the first day of the disciplinary hearing?
It was on the first day
Yeah.
where we had,
That is now before he went out to get, and then your lawyer, and asked your lawyer to come so that they could discuss? Or was it later than that?
he had already went out with the lawyer.
Or and then later on, he asked you to sign an affidavit?
Yes.
Okay,
That part I refused,
yes,
indicated that I cannot really do that because I will be lying.
yes, yes.
Did they want you to say anything about Mr. McBride or Mr. Sissoko in that affidavit?
Yes, they wanted me to say that they forced me.
They wanted you to say in the affidavit that Mr. McBride and Mr. Sogo forced you to do
Alter
what?
the report.
To alter the report,
Yes,
the first report.
that's correct.
So you saw the affidavit, you read it, or you didn't even see it, but you knew what it was saying?
No, I didn't see the affidavit.
Yeah, but they told you what it was saying.
They were saying that we need you to do an affidavit where you say that Mr. McBride and Mr. Sissoko forced you to change that report.
Yes, and you refused.
That's correct.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Kuba, after signing the settlement agreement, did you go and see Mr. Sissoko?
That's correct.
And can you just explain what happened?
I went to Mr. Sissoko. I found him at the hospital.
Would this have been on the same day that you signed the settlement agreement, or would it have been a few days later?
The same day.
Same day, okay.
I went to the hospital and I told him what transpired. But he had already known the details because I kept him abreast telephonically in
Yes,
terms of these developments. When I was meeting with him, he was still not really in supportive of what I did, but he was more relaxed. We could talk about it, and I said, no, rest assured, I did not implicate you there.
yes, yes, yes.
And
Did you have a copy of the agreement with you at the time or not, really?
I can't
you
remember. I
can't
think it was
remember.
with my lawyer.
Yes, okay.
I think it was with my lawyer.
So you assured him that you had not implicated him?
That's correct.
Okay.
Then I went back to Polokwane. Suddenly, I do not know whether it was on television or on newspaper, but there was an issue of saying IPID investigator has now spilled it all. He implicated McBride and Mr. Sissoko.
Was that in the media?
It was in the media. There was some talk about it.
Yes, okay.
Now, I received a call from Mr. Sissoko, and he wanted to know whether I implicated him. And I was very angry. I was very angry because, number one, I knew that that agreement, my lawyer would not really leak it to the media. So I started to have doubt because the other copy, my understanding, was given to the employer, who then leaked this thing. And also the are distorting, they're not putting the way it happened. So I said to Mr. Sissoko, I said, you know what? We had a discussion and an agreement that I can even testify in support of your disciplinary hearing. And I said, I'm going to do a confirmatory affidavit. I did not waste time. I went to the police station, and after, I think I did and I sent to him or something, but I finally signed it at the station. Then I gave it to him. I do not know what he did with that.
And what was the affidavit saying in essence?
The affidavit explained what had happened and also indicating, in fact, it's in line with other affidavits, like the confirmatory affidavit that I deposed in support of McBride earlier.
Yes. So it was consistent with what you understood to be the true facts.
That's correct.
Okay.
Could you have regard to page 292? Is that the confirmatory affidavit that you gave to Mr. Sissoko?
Just a minute. Yeah, that's the one. That's correct.
And if you can have a look at page 295, paragraph 15, you say, I wish to state categorically, except for what I've stated above, that neither McBride nor Sissoko instructed me to either make any specific changes in the report or to exonerate any person in the report. Is that correct?
That's correct. And if I want to add, it is also in line with what is in investment report. There is a paragraph they talk about the interview and says, Mr. Kuba indicated that he never received any instruction to exonerate anyone.
Yes.
And then at page 296, paragraphs 20 and 21, you say, in respect of my plea to the charges that I was facing, I do not in any way, given the manner in which the charge (S) are phrased, implicate or intend to implicate or in any manner suggest that Mr. Sissoko is also guilty of the charge that he is facing. In fact, in my plea bargain with my employer, it was also agreed, though same is not included as a term in the settlement agreement, that I am free to testify for Mr. Sissoko should he find it necessary to call me as a witness.
That's correct. And also, as part of that, my lawyer deposed a confirmatory affidavit in terms of what happened during that process.
Yes.
Now, did your employer know that you had deposed to this affidavit?
I reported on duty on the 28th of September. That was the Monday because it was concluded, I think it was around Friday. Early in the morning while I was having a meeting with my staff, telling them that I'm back and I wanted to check how they were doing in terms of the work, I received a call, telephonic call from Mr. Hamanyane. He asked me, why did you depose the statement? I told him that it's because it's the truth. And then after that, we had some discussions, but on the 29th, that is when I received a letter to state reasons in writing why I should not be dismissed. That letter was delivered, it was delivered late,
On the 28th,
on the 29th. I
29th.
think it was the 29th.
29th would have been a Monday, a Tuesday?
I think it was on Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken.
Because Monday was the 28th, or the 28th, I think you said.
28th.
Yeah, okay.
And then he indicated to me in that letter to say I must tell him why he must not replace the final written warning with a dismissal. He gave some background on the top to say, you concluded this agreement, now you deposed a statement. And when I got that, I still remember I could not continue, I had to leave the office. I went and consulted with the doctor because I was really depressed. I could start to see where it was going.
I guess especially after what you were told at the disciplinary hearing, which led to the agreement, namely, whatever you say, if you continue, if the hearing continues, you will be fired.
That's correct. And my expectation there was that if anyway they wanted to discipline me, the first process had already been concluded. They were supposed probably to initiate a new process and use that agreement as an aggravation, the way I know the labor relation processes. Now, I did not involve the lawyer. I drafted my own response. I indicated in my response that I do not know who leaked that, the information about the agreement, and that I think that agreement was done in bad faith. And I stated that I was ready that the agreement can be withdrawn and face the disciplinary hearing. I was ready for that. I indicated in the letter.
You had reached that point.
I've reached that point because I've realized that it seems as there was a trap which was used. Now let me go and really face this hearing and then give all I had in order to prove my innocence. Now, I sent that letter. I can't remember the exact time when I emailed it. But in the afternoon, there was a person from head office. That day I did not go to work because when I consulted with the doctor had given me the medication. So I decided to be at home and say I won't be able to go to work. Now, I was told that there's somebody on the way delivering a letter. Now, I was so surprised. But I felt this letter is a letter of dismissal. Now, I went to the gate.
This was now after you had sent your representations, your
Yes.
explanation.
Yes.
Yes.
Then I went to the gate because it's an estate setup. And I went to collect the letter. And I got the letter. It meant you are dismissed with immediate effect.
No hearing, nothing.
No hearing. I remember very well how I reached the gate, but I don't remember how I reached the house.
After getting the letter.
That's correct.
What was your state of mind after getting the letter that makes you not to remember how you reached the house?
The biggest problem is that it seemed as my mind was separated from my body. I was with my son, but when I went back, I don't remember whether I was there. Now, and I was walking barefoot. I collected, I went back. I could not remember what happened, but I remember while I was in the house. Then it started to sink in that I'm now dismissed from the employment.
Which is the thing you had sought to avoid when you agreed to this settlement agreement, even though you were not happy with page 1?
That is what I was seeking to avoid. But I want to say, Chairperson, that I somehow got the consolation later, very late. The consolation was when I heard in the news that Mr. Sissoko was fired when he was admitted in hospital without leading any evidence. I realized that what I did was simply to cross the bridge early. But anyway, I had to cross.
You became more convinced that what had been told to your lawyer, that you were going to be fired anyway, you were going to be fired if the disciplinary hearing proceeded, must have been true.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Kuba, who hand-delivered this letter of dismissal to you?
It was a gentleman called Musi, but I remember the time there was my deputy provincial head came at the gate. So he was used to hand over that letter to me. And I accepted the letter, and he then went back. But from head office, it was a gentleman who was from Gauteng. I can't remember the name now.
And the letter was signed by Mr. Khamanyan.
That's correct.
Yes.
So did somebody from head office in Pretoria again have to drive to Limpopo to hand-deliver this letter to you?
That's correct.
And if you can look at the timing between sending your representations in response to the letter you received on the 29th of September 2015, is it possible that those representations could have been considered before leaving Pretoria with this letter?
I think the way it happened, looking at when the report was said, even though I cannot remember vividly the times, I got this sense that the person was already dispatched before they could even entertain what I've written. Because my understanding is that when you have a representation, if you are an executive director, you will apply your mind and request maybe to have a meeting with your legal services or labor relation and consider the reason, evaluate them, and then decide on the decision. But the way it happened so quick, when I send it in the morning or around, I don't know whether it was 9 or 10, and you have in the afternoon a person there, it really shows that it was just what they requested me to do was just formality.
Did you email your explanation?
I think I emailed Chairperson.
Yes, okay.
Now, please will you have regard to the document at page 298. It's a document addressed to you by Mr. Kakhamanyani, dated the 29th of September 2015. Is that the notice of dismissal, essentially,
That's correct.
that was sent to you?
That's correct.
And if we have regard to paragraph 3, it says, the settlement agreement containing your guilty plea and the sanction was read out to the chairperson in the inquiry, who then made a ruling in which he confirmed its contents and pronounced you guilty of the charge. The inquiry then terminated on that day, 23 September 2015. A copy of the settlement agreement and Annex A, the charge sheet, is attached. On Friday, 25 September 2015, in breach of your guilty plea and the agreement for a lenient sanction short of dismissal as contained in the settlement agreement.
You're not going to read the whole letter, huh?
No.
Yeah, I think just go to what's important. Because
And without my knowledge or consent, deposed to an affidavit in Polokwane which contradicted the terms of your guilty plea as contained in the settlement agreement. So, and then he, in paragraph 6, says, I am of view that your conduct as explained above was a perpetration of a dishonest act and the defeating of the ends of justice, and you've already pleaded guilty to, and a serious breach of the leniency of the sanction that I gave you of a final written warning. So he uses, as you said, the fact that you deposed to the affidavit. Now, your response is contained on page 302, is that correct?
Yeah.
And that refers to you saying that there was no condition in the agreement that you couldn't depose to the affidavit, and you regard the agreement as being invalid, and you're going to go to court if need be to set it aside.
That's correct.
And then the next document on page 305, dated the 30th of September 2015, is that the letter of your summary dismissal?
That's correct.
I see when I look at this letter that Mr. Khamanyane wrote to you, asking you to inviting you to make representations why it is that in terms of that letter, what he was seeking to do is to in effect do away with the final written warning that had been agreed to as part of the settlement in respect of the charges that you had that had been preferred against you, and he was seeking to replace that with dismissal. So he was seeking to unbundle the settlement agreement.
That's correct.
He wasn't seeking to charge you with misconduct in regard to you deposing to an affidavit. He was seeking you to give a penalty, a sanction for the charges that you had faced at the disciplinary inquiry.
That's correct, Chairperson.
And that's quite strange because it looks like, on the one hand, he was seeking to do away with the settlement agreement, but on the other hand, he also wanted to use it because your plea of guilty was part of the settlement agreement. If the settlement agreement is put aside, that means there is no plea of guilty.
That's correct. And Chairperson,
And therefore, there should be an inquiry.
that's correct.
And the inquiry that had been scheduled from the beginning should then proceed.
That's correct.
But he wanted to retain the part of the settlement agreement where you had pleaded guilty, but to discard the part of the settlement agreement that related to a final written warning, and to then put in a different sanction that had not been part of the settlement agreement.
That's correct.
Thank you. Mr. Kuba, I'm now dealing with paragraph 103 on page 31 of your statement.
It's 100?
103, page 31.
Okay. And then?
Please could you tell the Chair what happened on the 3rd of October 2015, which was 3 days after your dismissal?
I'm sorry, Ms. Wenzel, I may have missed this while I was focusing on this letter from Mr. Khamanyan at page 3, the earlier letter at page 301, or was it the one ending at page 300? I see, Mr. Kuba, that in your representations to Mr. Khamanyan, among other things, or in the last paragraph, you say you had approached the PSA for an urgent High Court application to have the agreement set aside based on a number of reasons to allow you to go through the process of a hearing. If you decide to serve me with letter of dismissal, please use the same address that appears on your letter. I've been booked off 6 due to my ill health and will only be back on 8/10/2015. You had a sense that dismissal was going to follow. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yes, but you made it clear here that you were quite happy to actually go through, to resume the disciplinary process and go through a disciplinary process.
That's correct.
Okay.
And if you can perhaps have regard also to page 302, sorry, I can see you already closed it.
Okay, 302. Okay.
And then 1, 2, 3, the last paragraph on that page. You say the agreement does not have any condition or terms which require me to depose or not depose to statement regarding this matter or testify in favor or against Mr. Sissoko. Your paragraph 4 states that my conduct of deposing an affidavit after the settlement contradicted the terms of the guilty plea. The agreement does not have terms with regard to this issue. If the employer made an offer for a settlement agreement with ulterior motive, unfortunately, I failed to read such during the acceptance of the offer. I concluded the agreement in good faith, putting the interests of my family first. That's in line with what you testified.
Well, there is a paragraph which is, I think, important also on the second page of your letter, namely page 303. You say to Mr. Khamanyane, your paragraph 6 and 7 states that I should explain why you shouldn't revoke the final written warning and replace it with dismissal. The same plea agreement which was signed by the employer does not have a clause that allows the imposition of dismissal without a hearing on the so-called new misconduct or any contravention if really there was such. This clearly shows that this agreement is used as an instrument of victimization by the employer. With this threat of dismissal, I'm not convinced that the employer made such an offer. I am convinced that the employer made such an offer in bad faith. It is clear that with this amount of victimization, the so-called 6 months in which the sanction would be active is going to be a nightmare for me. That's what you said.
That's correct.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, now, Mr. Soko, can you tell the Chair what happened on the 3rd of October 2015, 3 days after your dismissal, which you deal with at paragraph 103 of your statement.
I received a visitation from Brigadier Ramela and Colonel Mahlangu of the Hawks. And
I'm sorry. Excuse me, Mr. Wenzel. I think you did refer to the letter of dismissal, but I actually didn't go there. I
Yes.
just wonder, what page is it again?
It's page 305, Chair.
I see that in the letter of dismissal, he says, that is Mr. Khanyan, due to the seriousness of this transgression and the seniority of the position you hold in IPED as the provincial head, I find that I'm unable to trust you anymore, and as such, the trust relationship has been irreparably broken down. The position you occupy is one of trust, and the person who occupies it must be a person with integrity. You have demonstrated through your dishonest conduct that you lack integrity and cannot be trusted by the employer. I therefore dismiss you from your employment with immediate effect. Does this in any way go back to a point you made earlier on with regard to why they would want to keep you as part of the settlement if you were guilty of such serious misconduct as dishonesty and defeating the ends of justice?
That's correct, Chairperson, because my understanding is that if then what he was saying here was true, why did he stomach the first one?
Yes.
He would not have
Yes.
negotiated
Yes.
to have that settlement agreement
Yes.
because we talk about dishonesty.
Yes.
But the truth of the matter is that
Yes.
they were using me to say, can they get me to turn me against McBride and Mr.
Yes.
Sisulu? That's
Yes.
it.
Yes.
And when it backfired,
Yes.
now they play this strict employer.
Yes.
Why did you depose this statement?
Yes. Yes. And okay, let me ask this question. How was your relationship with Mr. Khamanyane before the Tisbrai hearing?
Mr. Khamanyane was one of my best friends in the department.
Before he became acting executive
Before he
director?
became acting.
Yes.
To such an extent that we used to call each other even over the weekend. We were very, very, very close. And when we were attending either strategic planning, when we would go to eat, we would eat, probably sit together. Because our offices, our provinces were regarded as the best performing.
He being provincial head in
Him
the Free
being
State.
provincial head
In the Free State.
in the Free State.
And
while
you being
me
in
heading
Limpopo. Yes.
Normally they wouldn't find staff with us.
Yes, yes.
And it's just that he was not utilized in the investigation of high-profile cases or setting up offices.
Yes.
Then, when this thing happened, it really gave me a shock. But somehow, I just understood it this way. Some people are so ambitious to such an extent that when they are looking for a bigger position, integrity no longer matters. So I just felt that way. And really it was like, and I just want to put this part so that Chairperson can understand. Because after my dismissal, when I was struggling with how I'm going to run my life, I realized that I have put in petrol claim of the traveling that I did while I was doing these hearings. That petrol claim was supposed to pay me 8,000. I phoned head office, I think it was paid maybe after 8 months, after some times. I phoned head office. Our policy says they pay the claim within 30 days. Now, when I checked, and I kept on phoning, then one of the employees told me, we were told not to process your claim, because if we pay you this money, you're going to pay the lawyer and try to fight back. They want you to suffer.
Is that so?
That's correct. So what I did, I went to another lawyer in Polokwane, not Mr. Pokum I was using. We wrote numerous
Letters.
Numerous letters, saying that we would have to go to court, you have to pay me this thing. And they ended up not paying. They pay way after.
Did you say after 8 months or so?
After I had gone to the labor court to, it was way after.
Now, Mr. Sissogo testified that when Mr. Famanyana gave him, I think, his suspension letter, if I'm not mistaken, he basically, I think, asked him a question which kind of required Mr. Famanyana to say why he was doing this, because Mr. Sissogo said, I think the two of them also had, they had a very good relationship before Mr. Famanyana became acting executive director of IPED. He said he had even helped him, I think, when he was setting up in the Free State, setting up offices and so on. And he said Mr. Famanyana responded, and I think there's a transcript for it, by saying something along the lines that when you join the police, before they confirm you or confirm your appointment, and they instruct you to go and arrest your father, you have to go and arrest your father, which Mr. Sissogo understood as a way of saying, I've been instructed to do this. So in other words, it's not me. I've been instructed to do this. You did not have any such situation in your interactions with Mr. Famanyana?
No, I did not, on the basis that because I was far from Polokwane, far from Pretoria, I could not have engagement with him. And I avoided him to make any call to him.
Yes, yes.
So he would use someone to serve me. So I think with Mr. Sissoko, it was easier because he resides around here.
Yes, okay. Yes, okay, thank you. You may continue.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Kuba, could you please now tell the Chair what happened on the 3rd of October? It's dealt with in paragraph 103 of your statement.
On the 3rd of October 2015, it was approximately 3 days after my dismissal, I received a visitation from Brigadier Ramela and Colonel Mahlangu of the Hawks. When they were there, I was not aware, because when you enter through the gate, you need to get approval from the security. They will telephone the house. But I was just surprised when they were there. I don't know how did they get access. So they entered the house, and then before they could sit down, they were like moving in the sitting room. So my garage, it's facing the sitting room. They could see the car park there. And they could see, they checked the house, and they were saying, you have such a big house, it might be expensive to pay on a monthly basis. You have a beautiful car. Now, because you're not working, it might be really, really difficult. And I was surprised because they were saying these things before we could even start to. They were just doing like this. The house is nice, but how are you going to pay for this house? Because now you're not working. Then when I told them we can sit, they said, Mr. Kuba, we have a solution for you.
This is even before they could sit down.
Before they could even sit down. Say they had a solution for me. They are having something good for me. Then we sat down. They were having a docket. And fortunately, that docket, I was able to check, because while I was seated, I just become suspicious why there is a docket when these people are visiting me. So that docket, I wrote the case number down, not while I was with them, after they had left. And now what they did was to explain to me. They were very direct. But I need to indicate the person who was talking was the junior colonel, because they introduced themselves. The senior, with Brigadier Ramela, was always just quiet.
He was quiet.
I was quiet, not really talking much.
Yes.
The person who was a spokesperson was
Mahlangu. Yes.
And that is when he said, we want you to make a statement that will implicate Mr. Sissoko and McBride. And then you are going to be
Mr. Sissoko and Mr. McBride.
Yeah, so that you can be reinstated.
So you say he was very direct. That's how he put it.
They were very direct when they were with me there.
Yes.
They never duck and dive.
Yes.
Now, I refused. I said, no, I can't. Why should I make that statement? And I saw a charge.
Did he say in what way they wanted you to implicate them, to implicate Mr. McBride and Mr. Sissoko?
They indicated.
What
because
did they
say?
Said
they forced you to do to alter the report, isn't it? Then I said, no, they didn't force me. Now, I had already seen the charge there, in a docket. So I just started to talk to them and said, no. They persuaded. Came with tricks, it's going to be difficult to sustain yourself. How are you going to pay this? And what he was talking, he was really playing with my emotions. Somewhere, somehow, I felt to say, really, why this guy is saying this thing? Because it was, when you have just gone through a traumatic situation, pictures are not far-fetched. Immediately a person mentions a word, it just comes. So he was telling me what I even asked myself, how I'm going to pay. And he says, no, we're going to help you. Ntemeza sent us here.
What did they say?
They said General Ntemeza sent us here.
Oh, yes. So and they were from the Hawks, and at
Yes.
that time he was already acting head of the Hawks.
The Hawks, yes.
Yes.
And he said he's going to make everything in his power that you go back to work. Now, I knew once bitten, twice shy, but I wouldn't have done a statement. But I realized this is coming again. It's coming again. And after that, after we had a discussion, then they,
After you had the discussion, tell us how the discussion ended.
the discussion ended when they were saying that they will come the following day. They wanted me to think about it.
Yes.
And if it's possible, you can consult with your lawyer, any person. This is good for you. They were just indicating how, it will really assist me. Then the following day, I'm not recollecting completely what happened, but it seems that they came again
The following day.
the following day,
Yes.
and we could not understand each
This
other.
was February 2016.
No, that was
I'm sorry.
October
No, October 2015.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Then
Yes.
they left again.
On the second day, what did they say?
The same
I
thing.
want that discussion.
They wanted to me whether I've thought about it. And they were like playing like my friends. Please, we are going to help you.
They were being nice to you.
Very, very, very nice.
Yes.
Very,
And this
very
time, was it just the two of them again, or was there a
I
difference?
think it was two of them. I don't remember
Yes.
any person coming there. Now,
So I want the discussion between the two of you. Just tell me more this time now.
no, the discussion was whether you have spoken with your lawyer, what happened, what is the decision that you have taken. I said, no, I can't.
Yes.
They still insisted to say, we want to help you. If you have a problem, just give us a call. And they were saying that they were leaving. And then they left. But at that time, I was under a medication. I think I used it for almost a week.
Yes.
And it made me to kind of really sleep. I would sleep sometimes from 9 o'clock and until 4.
9 a.m. to 4 p.m.
And again in the evening, I would just sleep.
You would just sleep, yeah.
But I only use it for a week. And then, while I was in my sleep. I think I was in my sleep, I was just woken up. I got a call from Mahlangu. That is the call which was recorded. It was recorded because I had an app on my phone that will record every call, but I will just choose which one I want to save.
Yes.
Now, then, that is when they said to me, he said to me, but he was a little bit diplomatic in the call,
On the phone, yeah.
but he was reiterating what he said,
Yes.
to
yes.
say that you know your enemies. If you make this Ntemeza, you know Ntemeza will reinstate you. I just felt that he was a little bit cautious, unlike when he was there
When you was in the house.
in the house. But
Tell me on that conversation on the phone, just tell me in full what he said and what you said back, as far as you are able to remember.
what I remember is that he said, make a statement against your enemy.
Is that how he put it?
Yeah, put it. Because
Yes.
he was indicating, or these people, Mr. Sissoko and Mr. Mabrad are my enemies.
Okay.
My close friend is General Ntemeza. Because I've been interacting with him for
Yes.
quite some time.
Yes.
So, and he said they would want me to make a statement. So I was like this, I was just said, okay. I never engage with them. And even the first part, It indicated that there was something wrong with me because I even thought it was Poco. I said, Mr. Poco, because I thought it was my lawyer. But it was later that I realized that it was Colonel Mahlangu because he was there in the house. Yes. But I also want to add that even from that call, I realized that the medication was not really doing me good.
Yes.
I still remember my wife saying that, let's put this in the dustbin. You go and see how you look for a job outside, even if you pick up papers,
Yeah.
as long as our kids eat. And that was the last time I...
Oh, she was saying maybe just forget the IPIT issue.
Yes. And
Yeah,
then
just look for another
recover.
job.
So
Yes.
it was the issue of just that step down
Yeah.
and make whatever you can make.
Yeah, make peace with and
That's correct.
put it behind you.
That's correct.
So, but the conversation on the telephone or with Colonel Mahlangu ended on the basis that he said, make a statement against your enemies, and you said, or something like that,
Yes, and including that you will be reinstated.
and that you would then be reinstated.
That's correct.
Yes. Okay. And then what happened? Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Fensel. You may continue. Do we have that a transcript of
Yes.
that telephone conversation? Let's go to it.
We do, Chair. The transcript is Annexure 24, and it starts at page 308, the actual wording at 310. Now,
Yes. At page 310.
so you'll see, I don't know, perhaps you would like to read it, or you're happy for me to read it, Mr. Kuba?
Well, maybe you read it yourself, Ms. Fensel. I think it will
Yes.
be quicker.
That's fine.
Yeah.
He
But,
says,
but we don't need to read the whole thing, just
no, we don't
the
need to read
important
the whole
features.
thing. He says, no, I'm not at home, down at the bottom, paragraph 20, yet, but I'm at an elder's house. Where, okay. In the rural areas here, I am home, no one stays here, so I decided to come and open the windows for some fresh air. Oh, that's good, yes. Then he says, you say, no man, thanks, I will talk to Brigadier maybe tomorrow to finalize the appointment on Monday. Yes,
I think just say Kuba Mahlangu
Sorry.
so that
I apologize, yes.
Kuba, no
So-
man, thanks, I will talk to Brigadier maybe tomorrow to finalize the appointment on Monday. Then Colonel Mahlangu, yes, I forgot to show you something. Continue then.
And then Kuba, okay, Colonel Mahlangu. Yes, I forgot to show you something just so that you know that everything you do for good for yourself. Kuba, okay. Mahlangu, General, remember General is your friend. Kuba, yes. Mahlangu, remember General Mhlemeza is your friend. Kuba, yes, no, he's my friend. Colonel Mahlangu, you must understand that whatever you do well for yourself. Kuba, yes. Colonel Mahlangu, not to support your enemies. Kuba, yes. Mahlangu, we will make him, and we will empower him to ensure that you restore your job. That is what you must do. Kuba, okay. Mahlangu, that you must know everything of good you do for yourself. Kuba, okay. Mahlangu, and you are not in line with your enemy. Kuba, yes. Mahlangu, as soon as everything is finalized, General is the one who will do good for you. Kuba, okay. Mahlangu, as a friend, as a person you know. Kuba, yes. Mahlangu, I do not think he will dump you. I do not think he will throw you. He will throw you in the mud. The only thing you must do is be honest to yourself. Fix everything. Do not take wrong ideas and advices, and then we will tell General, NPA will deal with whatever they deal with, but we will inform General that since this guy has pushed for us to reach where we are. Kuba, yes. Mahlangu, as a witness. Kuba, yes. Mahlangu, then he is acquitted. Kuba, okay. Mahlangu, and something has to be done. He has to be restored next to his position or to his indistinct. Kuba, okay. Mahlangu, yes, please do. You must underline it. You must put NB behind it and underline it. Do not do it. Kuba, okay. And then the response, do not highlight it with a highlighter. You must write it with a red pen underneath. It is the best statement to you. You must empower yourself.
Yes, thank you. That transcript, of course, she hasn't read everything on the transcript. The transcript of that telephone call, does it reflect substantially the conversation you had on the phone with Colonel Mahlangu?
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Kuba, if we can then go to paragraph 107 on page 32 of your statement. And if you could please tell the chair what happened on Wednesday, the 24th of February 2016.
Maybe before we go there, did Colonel Mahlangu follow up on the issue that the two of you discussed on the telephone at a later stage?
What happened, I am the one who gave him a call. Yes. It was on Monday, because he was supposed to come on Monday.
Yes.
And that was when I said I was in Pretoria. And I said I won't be available.
Would that have been a few days after the day on which the telephone call took place?
That's correct.
Okay, you called him.
Yeah, just to say I'm not going to be available at home.
Was he going to come home?
He was going to come again on Monday because he wanted to see whether I've changed my mind.
Now, on the transcript of the telephone conversation, I didn't pick up anything in terms of which he was going to come home. Did he call afterwards to say, I would like to come home, or is it in the conversation?
I think
I might not have picked it because I didn't read everything, but that's your understanding in the telephone conversation.
Let me go to just to refresh my mind. Telephone conversation, the transcript, where is it?
It's on page 3. Well, it starts, you can look at page 310 onwards. 310.
310.
Yeah.
310. Okay. Okay, there it says, Norman, thanks, I will talk to Brigadier maybe tomorrow to finalize the appointment on Monday.
Oh, that's
right.
okay. Yeah. So that he was going to talk to the Brigadier with a view to make an appointment for either him or them to see you on Monday.
That's correct.
Okay, and then you phoned him before they could come.
That's correct.
And you said to him, you are not at home.
That's correct.
And what else did you say in that telephone conversation?
It was very, very short.
Yes.
I don't remember having said anything further than that.
Oh,
And he just said, okay,
okay. And there was no further arrangement made?
no.
Okay, and nothing actually,
I don't
they
remember.
did not pursue the issue?
No, there was,
Yeah, they did not. Okay, all right. I think then you can continue.
So just so we can get the timeline, this first visit that you had from Colonel Mahlangu was the 3rd of October 2015.
okay,
Then, I'm not going to deal with the Labour Court application yet. Then, the following year, on Wednesday, the 24th of February 2016, is it correct that you were again visited by members of the Hawks? If you have a look at paragraph 107 of your statement, page 32.
that's correct.
Please could you tell the chair what happened?
I'm sorry, I think we should say for what it's worth, Ms. Wenzel. You, Mr. Kuba, you did, in October 2015, you launched an application in the Labour Court challenging your dismissal, is that right?
That's correct.
And you have attached your founding affidavit and notice of motion as Annex HIK 25.
That's correct.
Ms. Wenzel won't go to that now, but just for the sequence, I wanted us to record the sequence. And then that, it seems, was decided in April 2017. She will deal with that later. In the meantime, then she wants to talk to you about what is in 107. Okay, then you can continue, Ms. Wenzel.
Thank you, Chair. So if you can have a look at paragraph 107 of your statement.
I received the visitation again from members of the Hawks. It was on the 24th of February 2016.
You shouldn't ask him to look at it unless he says he wants to refresh his memory. You just ask him a question and then he can tell the story.
Yes. No, I
Yeah.
intended him to do that. I wanted him to understand where, what it is,
What
just for the
happened in
dates.
February 2016? Did you have any meeting or visit by members of the Hawks?
That's correct.
Tell me more. Tell me about that visit. Who visited you? Where it was? And
it
what was
was-
discussed?
It was Brigadier Kava. It was Siwela. I don't remember the rank.
You can refresh your memory if you want to look at
Okay.
the names. That's fine.
And Colonel Maluleke.
Yes.
And those three, when they came,
Yes. Did they make an appointment before or not? You can't remember.
I can't remember whether there was any appointment made.
Yes. They came to your house.
That's correct.
Yes.
And that is when they told me about the case of defeating the
Defeating the ends of
end
justice, yeah.
and fraud. But when they showed me the case number, I realized that it is the same case number that I've already quoted it in my Labour Court papers long time ago during their initial visit
Of Colonel Mahlangu.
yeah,
and-
in October.
Yes, which you saw,
Yeah.
which they had with them.
But this time the charge had changed. It's no longer perjury, it's now
Yes,
fraud and
defeating the ends of justice. Yes, okay.
yes. And they told me that they were they wanted my warning statement.
Now, the Hawks, of course, at that time were under General Tlebeza.
That's correct.
Yes, your friend.
That's correct.
Okay, yes. The one who, according to Mr. Mahlangu, was going to have you reinstated if you signed a statement implicating Mr. McBride and Mr. Sissogo.
That's correct.
Yes, continue.
So I then agreed that I will submit a statement.
So what did they say to you and what did you say to them? I want that conversation.
They told me about the charges and they gave me questions. There were questions, I think they were up to, I think it was 21, I can't remember vividly now. But those questions were written down to say, did you do a report with Colonel Mokangwe? Did you
Yeah.
those type of things?
Yes. Yes.
And what I did,
Was the purpose of their visit to give you those questions, or was the purpose to serve you with a charge sheet or summons, or what was their purpose, the purpose of the visit?
there were no,
They didn't say what the purpose was?
no, they just indicated that there is this case of alteration of report.
Yeah.
We want to obtain a warning statement from you.
Or they wanted to get a warning statement from you?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
Then I took the questions and I said I'm going to submit a warning statement,
Okay.
of which I did.
Yes.
But I think I need to put this in context because that was for the first time that I told myself that now here I'm going to say it all.
In your statement?
In my statement. At
Yeah.
that time, I had not yet even told McBride about the visitation I got from
Colonel
Mtlemeza,
Masango and-
Mudluli, and that one was,
Oh.
sorry, Mtlemeza telling
Yes.
me about being sent by
Dramat.
General Mudluli.
Yes.
Those parts, those details,
You had not shared
I'd
them with
nev-
Mr. McBride and Mr. Sissoko?
even Mr. Sissoko did not know.
Yes, yeah.
Now, I felt that this time, let me open the lid. And I was doing it out of the feeling that I held the secret, which if I don't say it out, it will never be known. So I then did the statement. When I did the statement, at the bottom there, when I finalized the statement, then I started to respond to those questions. I think my warning statement were almost 11 pages there.
Yes.
And then 2 or 3 or 1 page, let's say around 2 pages, might have been the response to the question.
Yes.
Now, I took the warning statement and went to the office of Brigadier Kava. He had hired or requested somebody to give him an office in Polokwane. So he
Yes.
directed me where I had to submit that statement.
Yes. Otherwise, were these people from Gauteng or were they Limpopo people?
I think they were from Gauteng.
Okay, okay.
Then, what happened there, I gave him the statement. I was accompanied with a lawyer whom I requested from Limpopo, the one who assisted me to write those letters demanding for 8,000. Now, this lawyer was there, he read the statement we said there.
Just before you get there, if you have got those letters, please give them copies to the legal team where you were writing to the head office of IPED asking them to pay your claim and they were not doing that.
I'll check that.
Yeah, okay, continue.
Then I handed over the statement. Before I could sign, because there are some processes that need to be followed when you're obtaining a warning statement. It's not simply an issue of signing. And he read it and he prepared something that entails the rights of the person so that one could understand as a suspect that whatever he says is going to be used in the court of law. Now, when he read it, he said to me, in the middle, he just stopped.
Who was that now?
It was
Your attorney or
Brigadier Kava.
Brigadier Klaba, yeah.
Yeah.
Or he read it while you were there?
I was there, I was seated there because I wanted to sign.
Yes.
He read it, and he took my warning statement somewhere in the middle. He put it on the table. Mr. Kuba, was it this necessary to say? That's what he asked. I said to him, for me, it was necessary, but my lawyer was quick to say, you can't really tell what the suspect needs to say. It's his right. So he then took, and he was no longer willing. I could see that he took the page where I was just had to sign.
Yes.
But he was not really happy.
He was not happy with
He
your
was not happy.
statement. Yes.
He was not happy. Then after that, I signed and I requested a copy, which I got.
Okay.
If you have a look at page 351 of the bundle, it's Annexure 27.
You didn't say 251, eh?
351.
35.
Is this the statement that you were referring to, where you said you are now going to set the truth out?
The warning statement.
The warning statement.
That's correct.
And as you testified, you set out everything that had occurred, and it was only in the last part of the statement from page 361 that you say you will respond to the remaining questions.
That's correct.
Do you know what it was in the statement that the general had a problem with, or the brigadier had a problem with?
I could not see what he was reading, but somewhere, somehow, while he was reading, it took a bit of time, but he reached a part where it seems as he could not continue. And then he said, was it necessary, Mr. Kuba, to put this thing in? Yeah.
Yes.
And is it correct that this statement is substantially in line with what you've testified here today?
That's correct.
Mr. Kuba, were you later arrested?
That's correct.
And please could you tell,
Was that on the 16th of March 2016?
That's correct.
Yes.
please could you tell the chair the circumstances of your arrest?
We firstly went to the so-called CATS office, that's the office of a unit headed by Brigadier Cava, which was responsible for crimes against the state. We had a meeting saying that we're gonna be appearing on this date. We had a discussion of the bail.
At this stage, when you were arrested, your case in the labor court was still pending. It had not been dealt with, decided yet.
Chairperson, I would want to cover that part because there is also a bargaining council
Yes.
which I want to talk to.
Yes.
If you allow me, I can start with it and
Yes.
just indicate what happened before I come to the issue of the arrest.
If in terms of the sequence of events,
That's correct.
it happened later that's fine. But otherwise, if it's not going to disorganize your plan, you can deal with the arrest and then deal with that. Which one is enable you to tell your story better
I can deal with the labor issue
later?
now and just
Now.
finalize so
Okay.
that, because the arrest took place.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, deal with the labor issue.
The labor issue, as I indicated in my letter to Mr. Khamanyane, which of course he did disregard, was that I was going to make an application at the High Court to
yes.
request
The setting aside of the settlement agreement.
setting aside of the settlement agreement. I had already spoken to a person working at the labor, at the union, the PSA, and already indicated that you need to come and see me so that we can discuss this issue. Now, I then had a subsequent meeting with him, and he said the urgent application PSA will not be able to cover. And that is when I then turned to another lawyer.
Or your application to the labor court was an urgent application?
It was an urgent application.
Yes, okay.
Because I wanted them to set aside. When I had a discussion with my lawyer, not Mr. Poko, the new one now.
Yes.
He-
And who was that the one who helped you with the letters, or was it somebody else?
It was somebody else. It was the one who was helping Mr. Sisoko. It was Mr. Matibe.
Mr. Matibe, okay.
Yeah. And I requested, then he advised that when you challenge
A dismissal.
a dismissal, you don't have to challenge per se the agreement, because these are labor matters.
Yes.
You need to go through to the
Yes.
labor court. Now, I felt the advice was correct, and then we started to work. He gave me the bill. I accepted, even though I did not have money.
But the bill,
Yes, to see.
yeah. You said
Because-
we'll see it later.
We'll see it later. I just want the thing to be sorted out. We were given the date of, when was it? It was the 15th. I can't remember very well, but it was shortly after that. They were very quick. They give us the date. And the advocate who was helping me
Yeah.
was a junior advocate. And he said, no, he's confident that we are going to really make it. But when we went there, I think the argument of the employer was that this matter is not urgent. They didn't dwell on the
On the merits.
on the merits, on the
Yes.
substance. Now, after that, it means that I had to wait for the bargaining council.
The dispute about the dismissal was
dispute.
referred to the bargaining council. Yeah.
Now, Mr. Poker had prepared papers, and then we were given a date for the conciliation part. And I still remember the employer representative was there. I went there. I was also represented by Mr. Poko.
Yes.
When we had a discussion, because they wanted us to state the case, and then the employer rep also stated the case. During our discussion, the employer representative indicated that we were given mandate not to settle or entertain this.
That is the employer's representative.
That's
Yeah.
correct. That's the
Yes.
employer.
Yes.
Now, she wanted to know the facts, what happened. And there, she indicated that you're not going to succeed here. Why didn't you have a hearing? Why did you? They were talking, and they were just really
Yes.
saying, no, we were told to come and do this.
Yes.
And then after that, we left. That is the first time that I had a meaningful smile. That somebody coming from an institution has already gathered these facts. And then after that, we waited now for arbitration. It took for quite some time. Then we were told, and they decided that because there was no hearing, we are not going to lead any evidence. We are going to prepare arguments. And I still remember they did a research. There was also a similar case like mine. And they say an employer cannot replace any sanction by a chairperson. When the chairperson decides, you cannot do anything because you have appointed that chairperson to represent you as an employer. And his decision about the matter is what closes the case.
That case may have been the case of BMW in the Labour Appeal Court a number of years ago.
I think you're correct, Chairperson.
That I happen to know.
Okay.
Yes, continue.
And then we did our submission. I was very, very, very confident. Now, after that, I was told that within 14 days, I'm going to get the award. It might have taken more than 30 or 35 days. Now, there was this person whom I got his number. He was the person I was dealing with. Because when I phoned the bargaining council, they told me that if you want award, you deal with this person. So I was dealing with that person. Now, when it came to the 21st, I could not take it anymore. And I said, can you tell me what is happening? And he says, no, I'll come back to you. They are busy dealing with this issue. And I was phoning him daily. I wouldn't mind that I called him the previous day. I'll keep on calling him. Now, this other day, that was a day before he sent a report. He mentioned something that I felt there is something going on. But I downplayed because when you desire certain results, you kind of really shun your mind from the negatives. And then he says, the process here, he was trying to explain the delay. He says the process here, it takes 14 days to give an award, but there is a panel that sits because the presiding officers of this arbitration are not the employees. They get them from outside. Said, this person, if you write, it did not indicate this person is the one who did. It said, if you give a report and a finding, which the panel does not agree with it, they will engage you and write back to you. But if you say, it's my report, I will stick with the guy, they will never change it. It's up to you. That's why it had to take long. And when I got this report now, arbitration award, I just seated on the bed and I was checking on the email.
And it came through.
And it came through. That's the following day. When it came through, I read the report. I could not believe the finding.
What was the finding?
The finding was that my position was so senior that it did not require that hearing. That Mr. Hamanyane's letter requesting me to explain why I did not, why I deposed a statement amount to affording me with an opportunity similar to a hearing. He said the dismissal was both fair and he indicated another word which I can't remember now.
Valid and fair or something like that, or fair and
something
equitable.
like that.
Yeah.
But I looked at this report and I had to call my lawyer. And one time, after these presentations were served, my lawyer said to me, the chairperson of the hearing is the gentleman I work with because I'm sometimes requested by the bargaining council to share with him.
To
He knows
arbitrate.
him very well. Now, I was not really settled on the basis that they know each other. I was settled on the basis that my case is strong. He's going to be objective. And then after that, when I got this, I phoned my lawyer, and my lawyer said to me, Mr. Kuba, you can just suspect what happened. This case involves big people politicians. And he dropped the phone. And that part, I realized that I was dealing with bigger monster than what I thought. I then, at that time, I had not yet claimed my pensions. I was just working. You know, I started something, putting boards that I can clean carpets, going to houses. And now, I was doing
Just to
that.
earn a living in
To
the
earn
meantime.
the living. Then I said to my wife, I said, I don't want to stop that job. But let me claim my pensions so that when I have deficit, I will just take probably a little bit of interest and drop into the deficit so that I can be able to break even. And she agreed because I really realized there that the journey was going to be long. I realized the journey was going to be long. Having heard that to get your case finally heard by Labour Court, it will take nearly 2 years. So I realized that the journey was going to be long, and then I started to, the reality started to sink in at that time.
Yes, and then did you then launch a review application in the Labour Court, or what happened?
That's correct.
Yes,
And
to
that-
set aside that award and to try and get reinstated.
That's correct. And when the PSA studied the report, I still remember I met with the head, now not with the person who was assisting me initially, the head of PSA at a provincial level. And he just said, I can't believe these findings. And what he did then was to say, I will motivate that they approve the review of this. And that's what he did.
Yes, and then there was a review application in the Labour Court.
There was a review application, and there was a final judgment which was made, I think it was April 2017.
17.
It was almost a year and,
Yeah, I think there's a reference to 2017.
2017, it was a year and 7 months or.
Yeah. And what was the order that was made there?
The order was made that the dismissal was both, was unfair. It was a contrary of what
Yes.
the person said, yeah.
Yes, and you were reinstated.
I was reinstated, and also the order was like somehow I felt that it was a little bit,
Unfair?
not unfair,
Yeah.
because the department was given only 5 days to pay
A lot of money.
back, I mean.
Your back pay.
Your back pay.
Oh, you thought they should have been given more time.
But finally, of course, the one which I was really interested, I was really happy about,
Was the
it
job.
was going back to work, even if they've said they will take another year to pay.
Yeah,
I never had
as
a
long
problem.
as you got your job back.
Yes.
Yes.
That's why when the employer approached me, they says, there is this order.
Yes.
We have a problem that we can't just implement it.
Yeah.
The space is very short. We requested that you give us some more time.
And by that time, the executive director was back.
He was already
Mr.
back.
Mr. McBride.
He was already back.
So basically, it was his decision now.
That's correct.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I came back to the department,
Yes.
and yeah,
Were you paid ultimately for the whole time that you had not been working?
that's correct, including all the benefits.
All the benefits, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure you were very happy and the family was very happy.
You see, Chairperson, sometimes I was happy, but sometimes we normally gain less than what we lost.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
Because to
I
go and
understand
start
this,
rebuilding
yes.
the pension again, it's another issue.
yes.
When I went back to SARS to say, I want to pension fund,
Yes.
I want to deposit back my money, they told me such a big penalty,
Yes,
and I realized that
it's
going
a
to be very
difficulty, yes.
difficult.
And in any event, whatever pain you went through, just because later on you get an order reinstating you in your job, doesn't mean you didn't go through that pain.
That's correct.
You still went through that pain. The job comes later and the back pay, but you and the family went through that pain.
That's correct.
Thank you. I think, Ms. Wenzel, we are close to finishing with him.
Yes,
Let's
yes.
try and finish before, and then we take the lunch
Yes.
break.
No, we are virtually finished.
Is the arbitration award and the labor court judgment, are they both here?
No, but I will make them available.
Yeah,
Table.
yeah, put them in so that we have a complete picture.
Thank you, we will. I'm afraid now that we've dealt with a happy result, can we go back and remember your arrest?
We go back to pain and suffering.
Yeah. I was arrested on the 16th, and
The 16th of what?
it was, let me just,
Pay paragraph 111.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was
At
arrested on the
page
16th of March 2016 for defeating the ends of justice, and I think just to give a little bit is that I thought probably we were just going to go there and appear, they're going to save us with J175. But we were arrested, we went through the cells. And it was very traumatic for me. Because we went through, we had a group of other people who were going for court. We were put in a big hall where there were other suspects or criminal but I think what was happening was everybody was staring at us on the basis that we were the only people who were wearing suits. But
Yes.
And they requested belt. I still remember I took out mine. Fortunately, the trouser was very tight. I could not hold it by my hand. We then went for fingerprints. We then joined others again. And after that, they decided to give us our belts back. And I think there was a mention, one officer indicated, because Mr. McBride had a problem with the issue of the belt. So why would you need this belt?
Exactly.
And then he said, what if you hang yourself? And Mr. McBride said,
I mean, you prisoners already.
Mr. McBride indicated that he had been in the hang pile for some times,
In the
waiting
gallows.
to be hanged, and never decided to die. Why would he hang himself by these things that does not have a head and a tail? And then that is when he decided to give us our belts back. They gave us a small cell. We went and sat there, and then we went to court.
Yes.
Just one final question. Mr. Sissoko testified that recently there has been a public protector's report implicating him. Are you also implicated in that report?
I'm also implicated, Chairperson.
I'm sorry, what report is that?
If you remember, Mr. Sissoko testified that there's a recent report by the public protector. It had come out, I think, the last week, in the week that he was testifying or in the previous week.
Oh, but have you finished on the arrest and the prosecution issue?
Oh, no,
Yeah,
you're right.
I think
sorry.
finish on the prosecution.
What ultimately happened to your criminal case?
We had 3 court appearances, if I remember well, and then they were just being postponed, and we realized that the state was just buying time. They would refuse to give us certain part of the docket that we have right over, and they indicated that no, there's sensitive information. So we ended up saying, no, you can keep whatever you keep. Whatever you are giving us, we're going to use that. And that is when we appear on the 1st of November 2016. And I was ready with my statement in order to plead, to say, I plead not guilty. And that is when the prosecutor refused to continue with the case. We pressurized, say, we want to continue. He said, no, this case is not winnable. There is a constitutional court judgment. You people who were doing your work, there were a lot of just explanation, juggling around.
This was the prosecutor saying that to you.
That's correct.
So effectively saying the state has no case.
He was saying that. He also said that now the witnesses do not want to come forward and testify. And we were surprised because there is a remedy for that. You subpoena a witness. But they said, no, they can't do that. Until they said, no, they're withdrawing.
Did you ever understand who those witnesses were supposed to be or where that they were talking about?
They spoke about the witness whom they were speaking about was the person who accompanied me to take a docket. And anyone will know that that person did not participate in the report. He only faced the docket and indicated that, no, I accompanied him. And I said, I accompanied him. He accompanied me. What was that? What was of evidential material in his statement? But they say, because McBride is back, he may not want to testify. But I just realized that, no, that was just an excuse.
So you, other than that person, were you ever told who else was understood by the state to be state witnesses?
It was Sandile July of Versmans.
Yes.
Because they indicated that he was not ready when he was ready to go to court in order to challenge.
He was refusing to testify.
He was refusing to testify.
Yes.
But I could not understand if then Mr. July can submit a report and recommend criminal charges.
That you be charged.
And now he turned around and
he
says, no. I'd rather go to court and challenge you to say, I don't want to go and testify.
Yes, that was strange indeed.
It was strange.
So it's like he was not prepared to stand in court and show why his conclusions were justified.
That's correct. And my assessment there was that I don't think these things were intended to have ultimate result of serving justice. It was simply to have quick wins. Because you can charge me that it's process. But when you have to prove there in front of the judge, it's another story. So they didn't want to reach that stage.
Yes. Yes, and then the charges were withdrawn.
That's correct.
Oh, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Just finally, if you could deal with the recent Public Protector's report.
The Public Protector report is challenging. I'm just going to give a quick indication of what really happened.
Yes.
The Public Protector recommended that number of people within IPID be charged. But for some reasons, I'm
charged
also,
disciplinary?
disciplinary.
Yeah, okay.
I'm also part of that because of an appointment of a specialist who deals with cell phone analysis. But what happened is that the post was advertised and they did shortlisting. I was not there. I think they did the advert even before I even arrived in, I was reinstated. Now, the other day, because I was given a responsibility to head the task team, all task team in the IPID. Now, I was working in head office, and then I wanted to go to the lift. And then I was told that there is an interview, and one of the panel members was not there. They requested me to assist. And I indicated to them that when you assist in the panel, you need to be appointed. So I said, because I'm only participating in the interview, I request that you get a permission. They got the approval of the ED. Then I said in the panel, we recommended. But what I want to say is that the role that I play I played. It's governed in terms of provision 11 of the procurement, of the recruitment policy. But that policy, on that provision, it specifically say what is expected of a person who is interviewing. The consistency with posing questions and all the things. The public protector never made a finding on that. But they made a finding that
Well, I'm sorry, I wanted to ask Ms. Wenzel, why must I hear about the public protector's report that was issued recently?
Because if you remember Mr. Sissoko's testimony, it is his view that this is still part of a fight back.
But has the commission investigated that in relation to the conduct of the public protector?
Well, not in relation to the conduct of the public protector, but only from their perspective.
Yes, no, what I'm asking is, if they say the public protector is doing this, what the public protector is doing is part of the fight back, has that been tested by the commission? Has that been investigated?
It is being investigated, yes.
Yes, why don't we wait until that
Yes.
has happened?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's not in the statement.
Yes. No, we
It's a
won't deal
recent
with it.
thing.
Yes.
If they say it's part of, whether you call it fight back or whatever, you need to get statements from them, hear what the substantiation is, how they substantiate that, and then, if necessary, then we can come
Yes.
back.
Yes,
But I don't
that's
think
a
we should
valid-
deal
yes.
with it before there's proper investigation.
Yes.
Yeah, you understand that, Mr. Kuba?
I understand that, but
That what I'm saying is, and it's just that when Mr. Sissoko gave evidence, I think it was dealt with very superficially. What I'm saying is, it may be that it is something that should be aired here, but it shouldn't be aired before the investigators of the commission and the legal team take statements and look at it properly. You understand that?
I understand that, and I think we can deal with
Yes.
it
it can
later
be-
if needs to be
Yes,
dealt with.
yeah, that's right.
Yes.
So, because otherwise, we are dealing with something that hasn't been properly investigated, and
Yes,
it
I
shouldn't be
understand.
like that.
Yes, I understand
Yeah.
that, Chair.
Okay,
Chair, I don't have any
yes.
further questions for you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kuba, for coming to give evidence and to share with the commission your experiences and what you know. You probably will come back because there is still some further affidavit that you are going to put together. So arrangements will be made in due course for you to come back so that you can deal with the Versman's report. But be in touch with the legal team. If at all possible, depending on your situation, I think I would be glad if the preparation of that affidavit can happen without delay. I don't know what the chances are that by end of this coming week it could be done, but if not, at least it should not delay for more than 2 weeks. I would like those affidavits to be available. Your one, Mr. McBride's one, and Mr. Sissoko's one, and the legal team must be in touch with them, but I know you would share the information with them as well. Am I right, Mr. Kuba?
That's correct.
Yes. Yeah, and then we'll take it from there. But otherwise, thank you very much for coming to give evidence. But for now, you are excused.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to take the lunch adjournment now. The time is 26 minutes past. We will, past 1, we will resume at we'll resume at 2:30.
Thank you.
And when we resume, we will then start with the evidence of Colonel Naidu.
Yes, Chair.
We adjourn.
All rise.